Got back home from work 2 hours early for my job as a diesel mechanic. The whole shop has been putting in 55-hour weeks for the past month. We have a contract with a tight schedule to rebuild over 50 series Boldham diesel engines. Today, we found out that we were officially ahead of our schedule by a day. We're pretty worn out, and the bosses knew it. Heading home, I knew I was filthy. My normal filthy. Grace is usually waiting for me with a robe, so I can go directly to the shower, but she doesn't get home for another hour. I'm going directly to the laundry room. There, I'll drop my dirty clothing in my special basket and then head to the bathroom to take a shower. Rebuilding diesel engines, I'm around a lot of chemicals at work, but so far, it hasn't damaged my sense of smell. I know I stink from sweating, and I stink of chemicals and exhaust too. The laundry room is small hell. The whole house is small. It's 950 square feet, with 2 bedrooms and a small garage on a large lot near the highway here in Stone Valley, Indiana. Don't give me any about the city council, I don't want to hear it. I didn't vote for those idiots either, so just shut your goddamn face about that. We got this repo from the bank for just under $40,000. The previous owners had literally trashed the place, but I knew that the structure was solid. We ended up gutting one room at a time. Only after we got a fully functioning bathroom and a barely working kitchen. Those first 4 months were brutal. Taking off my shirt, I smell something not right in the pile of dirty clothes at my feet. I smell sex. I know Grace's smell, but there's more, and it's strong. I knew that couldn't be me. Her time of the month started 3 nights ago. She never wants any lovemaking during that time, so I always stay away. Picking up her clothing, I see and smell dried semen and cigarette smoke on her blouse and jeans. She doesn't smoke. Adam, the wannabe mechanic who rents our garage, does. In his spare time, Adam takes rice buckets and turns them into low-end street racers on the cheap. Looks like cars weren't the only things he was working on. Zero tolerance. When you trust somebody, you don't ask probing questions, you don't look beyond what they say. I have zero tolerance for this. I didn't take this from my first wife, and as my name is Travis, I want with my current wife. I thought that since we were both burned in our first marriages, we would never think of screwing anyone else, not physically, not emotionally. I thought that our lives were open and supportive of each other. I guess I was wrong. It's déjà vu all over again. Recovering from being burned is how we started our relationship. Recovering from being burned again is how we'll walk out of it. I got pretty good at planning the rehab of this fixer-upper. Those planning skills will help me in this sham marriage too. Then it hit me. I've got to get calm. Sitting quietly on the washer, I exhale slowly, repeat, and repeat another 20 more times. Get calm. Do that mindfulness. Take your goddamn sweet time. Travis, you're all you've got. 20 minutes of stopping my life lets me think without the dread. I now have 2 goals. The first is to prove without any doubt that she is stepping out. The second is to legally end this marriage with the minimum of financial loss. Well, I think I have 3 goals. The third goal is to move on with my life as quickly as possible. The easiest one to start with is ending the marriage. Yeah, right, in my dreams. If only I could snap my fingers, and it would be over. Just like last time, when in doubt, I check Wikia. It's not always totally correct, but it's great for an overview. I search how to divorce in Indiana. I may not know much about computers, but I can do easy searches. Holy, with no kids, it's only 3 documents, and if the judge agrees, in a minimum of 45 days. The first is the civil cover sheet. It's about who we are, it's our information, the same info we use to file taxes. Next is the domestic relations affidavit. That's all our assets, income, liquid assets, expenses, personal property, real estate, and debts. Last is the petition for divorce that lists out who gets what and what we agreed on. The judge gets to make the final decision, and it can all turn south on their say. Dividing up what we own and owe doesn't have to be equal in the eyes of the law. Digging in our office desk, I grab last year's tax returns, our 401k files, our bank statements, and loan statements. Since we were both broke after our last divorces, we made it a point not to get into debt. We spent only what we really needed to. Without a mortgage, all our rent money went into rehabbing the house, buying supplies, and basic living. We both knew that a downturn in the economy could bankrupt us again, and I don't trust those scumsuckers at the top of the money chain. In the 4 years we've known each other and 2 years married, we managed to rebuild our finances. We were finally getting ahead in life. Now, at 31, I'm a 2-time loser. We owe $3,800 on her car and $4,100 on my used truck. Both vehicles aren't worth much. We bought them 3 years ago, and they're now both 8 years old. Our credit was still shot from the grind of our last divorces, and our car loans are at 12. I'm sure they aren't worth what we owe. She makes a little more money than I do, and came into the marriage with slightly less debt. We both have been able to put away about $9,000 a year for the past 3 years in our 401ks, including matching contributions. The market boomed, and she's got a balance of $55,000, and I've got $52,000. We have an emergency fund of $6,500 and $900 in checking. The checking account is only that high because some big bills are due soon. Laws being what they are, I know I could still get screwed. How should I approach this division of our stuff? What are my most important goals? Quick, don't lose your shirt. No, not like last time when I also lost my soul. Screw it, another goddamn merry-go-round. No, not a merry-go-round. What's that old song line? I've been flushed from the bathroom of your heart. The angel on my left shoulder says, okay, Travis, be honest, be open, and be non-confrontational. The devil on my right shoulder says, if she fights it and cops an attitude, screw her. Let her know in no uncertain terms that you'll go scorched earth on her. You're not going to be the only one to lose, make her feel that pain. It's hard to go through this again, but now I have another goal to meet. How do I prove that she's stepping out? Nanny cams, internet cameras, and all that tech overwhelms me. I'm sure they can be rented, and I could find someone to set it up for me. I'm good with engines, but terrible with setting up software and hardware. Walking aimlessly through what will soon not be our little 2-bedroom house, I realize something. I've never seen anything that leads me to believe she was doing the dirty deed in our bed. Grace's car's backseat is doable but damn small. The wannabe mechanic has those little rice burners, not much room in there either. The only other place that has some privacy is the garage, where he has a makeshift office. There's an old futon in there that would work. She has an hour for lunch, and the wannabe wrench works his day job nearby. I head over to the garage at the back of the property. There are 2 bays, with the half bay being a bit of a storage room or office. I haven't been here much in the 6 months he's been renting it. Opening the door, I smell hydrocarbons. There are open, empty containers of chemicals and paint cans lying around. I have to step around piles of used rags soaked in grease, solvent, and paint thinner. It looks as if he's been dumping used motor oil on them or on the cement floor. Is this place becoming a toxic site? Opening the door to the storage room, I see that I've found their spot. There are 2 used condom wrappers in the trash, and the condoms are smeared with something fresh. I have to get calm. Slowly breathe in, slowly breathe out, repeat. I want to kill the asshole and the woman I loved. But slowly breathe in, slowly breathe out, repeat. Son of a bitch, it's actually getting easier. I know I have to return to work, so I get home at the normal time. I'm a trained mechanic, a professional. This aholi that's plowing my wife doesn't even rate as a parking lot mechanic. There are piles of used parts, tools, paint cans, and more lying around the garage. He's stapled lightweight extension cords to the trusses for extra outlets. There are hazardous chemicals stacked inside the garage. He's turned this place into a fire hazard and chemical dump. Fire hazard and chemical dump, that's it. It's the perfect answer. She was starting her period yesterday, so her giving him her bum fits. They're probably going to be back again soon. She's got the locator app on her phone because she's lost it several times, so we'll be able to see if she's here at lunch, and that'll probably mean they're together. The garage is a fire hazard. Captain Mark is our local fire captain, and we maintain his diesel engines under a Thailand Materials contract. I'm sure I could get him to inspect the garage. I wonder if he could get the city inspector to determine if there's a business being run in this residential zone. They'll leave that for him. In the past, he's told me stories about the things that firefighters see. Finding 2 cheaters screwing up a storm wouldn't be the first or the 20th time he's seen it. Back at work in the main shop's desk area, I pull out the paperwork I brought from home and fire up the old desktop. I'm pitiable at using computers, but my limited experience with Excel on Windows works. It's my program of choice. Whatever you put in one of those little boxes stays there. That's kind of true, but I can always get help from the office staff. They take pity on us dumb mechanics. The list of what we own and owe starts to come together. After about an hour, I call the firehouse. It's now set to meet with Captain Mark later today, if he isn't out on a call. All in all, I take an hour and a half to list our stuff and craft what I think is a fair division of property. Printing 2 copies, it's time to go to the firehouse. They'll put in for an extended lunch tomorrow morning to take care of some private matters. Work is pretty good about those kinds of things if you make up the time later. I know I'm going to have a lot of time later. Hey, Travis, what can I do for you? Captain Mark said as he reached for my hand to shake. Well, could we go into your office? It's kind of private. He looked at me with concern and led the way. What's the problem? Is somebody stealing something? Something unsafe? Something else? Sitting up straight in the chair in front of his desk, I start slowly. Captain Mark, we've worked together for the past 5 years, haven't we? He nodded. And I've never asked you for a favor. He shook his head no. I have a big one for you. But I don't want you to do anything if ITLL get you in trouble. I think we're good with one another. So why don't you just say it? And if I can't, all we've talked about is getting the FD to get some more maintenance. I'm damn sure my wife is getting some on the side. We rent our garage to a wannabe mechanic, and I think it's him. What do you want me to do? This part is not really in my line of work. It looks like they use the storage room in the garage I rent out to him. The good and bad thing is that he maintains the area to be a #1 fire hazard. I walked through there earlier today, and given a spark or one of his cigarette butts that he throws everywhere, the whole place would go up in minutes. Could you schedule a fire inspection? When they're at it, I think they do it over lunchtime, as they both work somewhat nearby. If you and I walk in on them, it won't be a he's-aid. A couple of pictures, and I start filing for divorce. I waited a second and added, I could use a witness and someone to help me not do anything stupid. I could really use your help. And on the other hand, the inspection will stop that garage from going up in flames, so ITLL be less work for you in the long run. Captain Mark was quiet, looking at me long and hard. I guess you're trying to stop somebody from going to jail. I nodded. Yes. He continued. For murder? I answered. Maybe. I just don't want to be in that position, Mark. Mark, an officer and fireman for over 20 years, responded. I can tell you that I've professionally witnessed a variety of situations like this. I will do the inspection as you requested, as that is my duty. Whatever we find there, as the owner has invited me on the premises, will be public record. Does that help? I smiled and asked, could you text me when you're nearby for the inspection? He nodded. We shook hands before I left, knowing I had a good working relationship with him. He was supportive of what I wanted done. I guess I'd been through something like this before. He only took a rain check on the beer I offered, saying he'd save it for after it was all over and he was off duty. Now it's time to go home and act as if nothing is the matter. I started the day off by making sure the phone locator app for Grace's phone was working. I watched her leave home and arrive at work. The second thing I did was check in with Captain Mark to confirm he wasn't out on a call. He texted back right away. The morning dragged on after 10 a.m. I was checking my phone every 10 minutes. After 11 a.m., it was every 5. By 11:35, I saw that Grace's phone was no longer at work. I had to wait the 10 minutes to see her arrive at the house. That's when I texted Captain Mark, and we met 2 blocks away in the back parking lot of a fast food joint. I was nervous as hell, but Captain Mark seemed to be enjoying the adventure. We left to go to my house. I could see 2 cars in the driveway, Grace's and the wannabe mechanic's rice burner. Grace had no reason to be home. As agreed, we parked several houses away, out of sight of the garage. Standing in front of my house, I whispered, Mark, we should go through the house first to see if anyone's there. He put his finger to his lips for silence, then headed toward the garage and cued his ear. That's when he smiled and whispered, I hear them out back. My hearing has been shot to hell for years. Pulling out his clipboard and his official camera, he started writing the citation and taking pictures of the fire code violations. It was only a minute outside the garage and then 30 seconds for each bay. Standing in front of the closed door where the noises were coming from, he smiled at me and pointed. I nodded. The small room in the back was used as an office and storage for small parts and hand tools. It also contained the old futon. Opening the door quietly, the 2 people on the futon didn't hear a thing. They were completely caught up in each other until they saw a flash from Mark's camera, followed by the bright overhead lights flipping on. Then all hell broke loose. Grace screamed, and Adam scrambled off her. She tried to find something to cover herself, grabbing a dirty overall that smeared black grease over her bare chest. Captain Mark laughed, and I did too, a painful laugh, like finding a rat at the bottom of a paint can. There was no place they could run to. Tired of waiting for the crying to slow down, Captain Mark looked at the 2 of them, then directly at Adam. By the way, the reason for my visit is to issue you citations for fire code violations. He tore off a citation and handed it to the naked Adam. These things need to be taken care of before you return here. This building is closed until it passes the next inspection. Any questions? Grace barely stopped crying, and both of them just looked frozen, like deer in headlights. Captain Mark turned to leave, then threw out a parting shot. By the way, if you don't clean up that filthy mess, we'll get the health department here, and they'll close you down for their violations too. Chuckling, he added, "Oh, and have a nice day. It's a pleasure to serve you." As he walked past me, he gave me an "I'm sorry" look and then left. I followed him out, locking and bolting all the doors and windows when I got inside. Pulling out a diet soda, I went to the bedroom and started tossing all of Grace's clothes into the living room, right by the door to her car. I finished in about 20 minutes and looked outside. Both their cars were gone. Then, it was back to work to make up for my 2-hour lunch break. When I got home later that night, I saw that she must have come back to get her clothes. Her dresser was missing, along with a few odds and ends. I checked the garage, and the rice burner Adam had been working on was gone too. I was swearing at the world when the doorbell rang. I prayed it wasn't Grace, but it was Captain Mark, holding out a bottle of bourbon and 2 glasses. "Thought you might like a little company tonight," he said, giving me a bro hug, punching my arm, and heading to the kitchen for ice. "First off, stop calling me Captain, okay?" He handed me a tumbler filled with ice and bourbon. "Drink this one slow. Don't get wasted on me real quick." All I knew was that I needed somebody there that night, and he listened to me rant and rave, cry and scream, whine and moan. It had been 4 years, and the life I thought we were building had gone up in smoke in that laundry basket. In the morning, I woke up still dressed in everything but my shoes, lying on the couch under a blanket. There was a handwritten note from Mark to call him. He stopped by for the next 2 evenings. On that last night, the doorbell rang again, and I dreaded answering it. Standing at the door was Grace, with Adam a few feet behind her. I slammed the door and turned off the lights. She kept ringing the doorbell and even tried to use her key to get in, but the locks had been changed that first evening. Best $150 I ever spent. After a couple of minutes of the doorbell ringing, Mark stood up and said, "Let me handle this. You sit here, okay?" I nodded as he walked to the front door and stepped outside, closing the door behind him. 5 minutes later, there was the screech of tires. I felt relieved until Mark walked back in with Grace behind him. "Travis, why don't you get the paperwork you've been working on and bring it to the kitchen table?" he said. I nodded toward the shelf where I would kept it the past few days. Mark and I had gone over the division of property several times. That's when I found out that his sister had gone through a nasty divorce, and he was well-versed in the emotional, legal, and gut-wrenching pain of a marriage in tatters. He had helped his sister through her divorce and felt compelled to help others in similar situations too. Here was a guy who believed in paying it forward. Grace sat down at the far end of the table, and I dropped a copy of our assets and debts in front of her. I gave her a few minutes to see what we had, then started my summary. The house can go on the market for $160,000, and after paying the realtor, we should net about $15,000 each. Grace gasped, clearly surprised at what my efforts had been worth. With taxes, givebacks, and other selling costs, we should net around $145,000. You keep your car and payments, and I keep my truck and payments. You keep your 401k with a balance of $55,000, and I keep mine at $52,000. We split the emergency fund of $6,500 and use what's left in checking to pay off the bills. I've already paid off our credit cards and canceled them." She winced at that part. "If you agree, we can file immediately, and with luck, we can move on in 45 days. I clenched my teeth, reminding myself that emotions had no place in a money negotiation. Mark and I had discussed this. I might have been younger and more immature the last time, but I didn't have that excuse now. "I'm sorry, Travis. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you," Grace said, her voice shaking. "Grace, just don't go there. The problems with this marriage started a year, and that was 2 years ago. You wanted a beautiful house, and because we couldn't afford it, I had to rehab this fixer-upper. That's where my time, our money, and my energy went." I exhaled, letting out frustration and pain. "And you didn't help much at all. You've been stepping out for what? How long?" I closed my eyes. "Actually, it really doesn't matter, does it?" She shook her head no as I continued. "We were both cheated on in our first marriages. We both knew what that felt like. Tell me, if you'd caught me with another woman, what would you have done? Tell me everything would work out and be okay. Tell me you'd forgive me." Turning away, she started crying, but I didn't bother to pass her a tissue. She was going to be on her own from now on. I didn't bother to pass her a tissue. She was going to be on her own from now on. I looked out the window, back at the garage. Adam, the wannabe mechanic, I'm guessing this started before we even rented out the garage to him, didn't it? You were getting some on the side before he even moved in. Still looking away, I saw her reflection in the storm window. She nodded. looking down at the floor. 3 years, I said, half to myself, shaking my head. We've lived in a construction zone to make this place what you wanted. The big projects like the kitchen and main bath, they took everything I had. Every vacation day, every spare hour I wasn't at work. That main bathroom? Took me over a month because of all the issues we found. And I did it because you wanted it. I never wanted to do all of this for myself. She looked away, and I could see her face tighten in the reflection. Honey, she began, but I cut her off. No, I'm not your honey. This marriage died when you chose to go outside it. You can't take that back. I can never trust you again, so don't even try. She hung her head. I know, she whispered. You came into this marriage after being burned by your ex. I thought that was something we shared, that would have each other's backs because we knew what betrayal felt like. But every time things got hard, you needed someone to blame. And this time, it was me. She started to protest, but I silenced her with a look. To make your ex pay, you've burned me. Anytime anything goes wrong in your life, someone has to pay. That's who you are, Grace. She shuddered, realizing the truth of what I would said. That's the thing about people. They do dumb things for stupid reasons. I've seen you do stupid stuff before, but nothing this bad. I did my own dumb stuff too. But this is the atomic bomb of mistakes. We're not picking up the pieces from this. I started pacing the kitchen, the paperwork clenched in my hand. We've got two choices, Grace. We can fight it out in court, where every cent we have will go to lawyers. Or we agree to something now and get this over with quickly. What do you want to do? She nodded in silence, recognizing what needed to be done. I've been down this road before, Grace. I know what lawyers do in divorces. The first marriage taught me that self-righteous anger just warms the lawyer's pockets, not ours. So let's keep this clean. I held up a second envelope, and Grace nodded, resigned. She understood what I meant. She knew that, like last time, it could turn into a drawn-out legal battle. Her first marriage had ended in bitterness and debt. She had been younger then, fueled by anger, demanding her ex pay for what had done. In the end, they'd both had to borrow money just to settle their legal fees. This document, I continued, spreading the papers on the table, lists all our assets. I recorded everything I could find. The first document is just a straightforward list. This next one is a spreadsheet with 3 columns: the property, who owns it, and its value. We came into this marriage with almost nothing, both of us broke and barely out of debt. As soon as our jobs became steady, we saved, lived cheap, and managed to pay $40,000 cash for this repo from the bank. My proposal is simple: we sell this house and split whatever we get down the middle. We split the emergency fund down the middle and whatever's left in checking. You keep your 401k, and I keep mine. The cars stay with each of us, and no income maintenance for either of us. Grace looked down, clearly stunned by the numbers. She'd come into this marriage with almost nothing, and now, at 32, she could walk away with over $75,000 and her retirement. She was silent for a while, taking it all in. Why don't you think about it overnight, Grace? Just make sure that overnight is not here. Not in this house. She looked up, visibly hurt. Travis, I didn't think go with Adam. He's been so good for you, he should be glad to take you in now. But not here. Not in this house. Not in this bedroom. Not in this bed. Understand? She started crying again. But this time, I laughed. That's not going to work on me. You can go sleep on the futon in the garage if you really need a place. You're already familiar with it, aren't you? Count up the condom wrappers in the trash while you're at it. Downcast, she got up and left. I watched through the window as she texted someone, and Adam picked her up a minute later. As she drove off, Mark handed me a tumbler filled with bourbon. You didn't do half bad, Travis. Not half bad at all, he said as we sat in silence, nursing our drinks. He listened patiently while I ranted about everything that had happened. He stayed until nearly midnight, letting me work through the anger and pain. By the time he left, I felt a little more settled, though the pain was still there. Over the next few days, Grace took her things, and I threw myself into work in cleaning up the garage. There was no way I would be able to show the house with it looking like a toxic dump. Work allowed me to bring the chemicals and waste to their disposal contractor, saving me over $1,000 in costs. I packaged up the wannabe's remaining tools, parts, and scrap metal on pallets and had it delivered to his apartment complex. The delivery guy was a buddy and did it for cheap. He wrapped everything in plastic with Adam's name and address in big letters so rain wouldn't damage it. I would occasionally check Grace's phone locator, seeing she was either at work or Adam's place. Then, about a week after I delivered all of Adam's junk, Grace texted, asking to meet. I suggested we meet at the firehouse on Tuesday at 8. Captain Mark said we could use one of the meeting rooms, and it was neutral territory somewhere I wouldn't have to worry about Adam showing up. Plus, Mark would be around, giving her and me a little peace of mind. I arrived early, hanging out with Mark until Grace showed up in her car. There was no sign of Adam. A couple of burly firefighters met her at the car and escorted her to the firehouse, where Mark brought her to meet me in the back conference room. She sat down at the far end of the table, and I could tell by her nervousness that she knew this was final. I didn't greet her, just looked at her in silence. Clearing her throat, she finally said, "Travis, I'm sorry." I held up my hand to stop her. "Don't. Just stop it right now." Mark put a calming hand on my shoulder, and I took a deep breath, nodding. After a minute, I motioned for her to continue. "I'm sorry, Travis. Getting involved with Adam, it just kind of happened. I didn't mean for it to, but it did." She wiped her tears, her voice trembling. "You were partially right. I knew him from after my first divorce. He paid attention to me when I was out with friends. I didn't think anything would come of it when he rented the garage, but over time, things changed." She sobbed, looking into my eyes. "I was wrong, okay? I was goddamn wrong. There's no excuse for it, and there's no way to take it back." She cried for a while, and I just sat in silence, letting her realize the gravity of her actions. "You're right, Travis. I became a 304. Your wife became a 304. I could see how much she hated that word, but this time, there was no pretending. She closed her eyes, steadying herself. "I know you'll never trust me again. I don't even know if I'll ever trust myself again. We need to end this marriage as quickly and as painlessly as possible. It's the least I can do for you. I'm moving to Denver to be near my sister Heather and her husband Sam and their kids. I found out I can transfer my job there." She looked down, genuinely broken. "You suggested we split everything down the middle, and I'm okay with that unless you have something else in mind." She was giving me an end to this Night Merino fight, no arguments, just an acceptance that it was over. I looked her in the eye, feeling the last of the anger drain away, replaced by exhaustion. "Fine. We sell the house, split whatever we get down the middle, and then we're done. You keep your assets, I keep mine. I don't want the house, or want to buy you out of it, Grace. That was going to be our house until you turned it into something else." She nodded, visibly struggling with her emotions. "I know. I believe that jerk. He kept telling me that a wife of his would never have to work that hard, give up so much. A real man would pamper his wife and give her all the good things in life." She picked up a tissue and wiped her eyes, then took a deep breath. I was played. She wiped her eyes again. Another deep breath as she fought to stay composed. "There are people in this world who are just evil. I fell for his lies about you, about me. I stopped believing in us when I listened to him." Her tears started again, and she was sobbing uncontrollably. I sat there, not sure what to say or do. After a moment, I realized that I was free. This marriage was over, and I didn't have to carry the weight of her choices anymore. This was her mess, and I had to let it be hers alone. 3 years after the divorce was finalized, I found myself driving to visit an old friend, Bill, who had retired to a quiet suburb outside Denver with his wife, Alicia. This was his second marriage, and through it, had gained a large extended family, 2 grown stepsons, a grown stepdaughter, and 3 step-grandkids, with another on the way. He was happy, and I was glad for him. Since the split, I would focused on rebuilding my life. Grace and I sold the house quickly, just like we'd agreed, and split everything down the middle. I can't say I was okay with what happened, but the anger had faded over time. Yes, she did wrong, and yes, she was seduced by a master manipulator. But at least she'd owned up to it, and started to look at the issues that led her there. That probably mattered to me more than anything else, though I still wasn't sure why. I hadn't talked to Grace or seen her since the day we signed the divorce papers. She had a lot of problems, and our split forced her to face them. Each year since the divorce, she sent me a Christmas card, writing a brief update about what she'd learned about herself, her progress. In a way, it was comforting to see her healing, even if it was slow. It helped me with my own pain too, knowing she was starting to understand the damage she'd caused. She was now 600 miles away from Stone Valley. As for the wannabe mechanic, Adam, he ran into a streak of bad luck that never seemed to end. Mark kept in touch with his firehouse friends and gave me the inside scoop. I would also heard a bit from our realtor. Apparently, Adam ended up putting in the highest bid on our old house, overpaying by almost $12,000 in a second round of bidding. 3 other buyers had been interested, but Adam outbid them all. Something told me he had an eye on that garage. The house was sold, and the money was split between Grace and me, just like we agreed. Her share was wired to her new account in a Denver suburb, where she was living with her sister Heather, her brother-in-law Sam, and their 2 kids, Lily and Max. I couldn't help wondering why anyone would name their kids with matching initials. Maybe it's just me, but it struck me as a bit passive-aggressive. Either way, I couldn't help myself. I left a few little gifts in the house for Adam. In one spot, while re-sweating a hot water pipe, I managed to create a slight drip in the wall and added a few mold spores. Replacing and repainting the drywall, there was nothing to see, just a small leak, barely noticeable. There was flashing around the chimney that had passed inspection but, strangely, failed after the bid was accepted. A couple of loose shingles and strategically placed spores should give Adam a nice welcome to your new home present. For the garage, I rewired the circuits, switching them so a single circuit would cover 90 of the outlets, but it was the only 15-amp circuit in a line of 20-amp ones. That was done purely for fun, but the best was yet to come. 2 months after Adam moved in, he faced a new inspection from the fire department. Mark had just retired, and the new fire inspector was following up on all known fire hazards. Adam had turned the garage back into another fire hazard, so he received a fresh set of citations, shutting down his garage until he fixed everything. Then the city cited him for operating a business in a residential area. 2 weeks later, a fire broke out in the garage, spreading quickly into an uncontrollable blaze. The fire department traced it back to the office on the futon, which had ignited the rags on the floor, the walls, and the rafters. It was ruled as not spontaneous combustion, but the investigation remained open, as there was hope of finding who started it. The fire spread to the house, where dry, uncut grass led flames up to the dryer vent. The uncleaned vent, full of highly flammable lint, caught fire instantly. The fire department partially saved the house, but it was so damaged that it was deemed a total loss. Adam's insurance refused to pay a dime due to negligence from fire violations and the unauthorized business in a residential area. Facing criminal charges and possibly insurance fraud, he withdrew his claim and eventually filed for bankruptcy. Arriving at Bill's place that weekend, I realized he had a big family gathering. It was the 4th of July, and there had to be at least 50 relatives there, all generations hanging out, talking, playing games, eating, and drinking. I knew after the first dozen introductions that I was lost. I would need name tags to remember everyone. So, I smiled and nodded, telling everyone I would remember what they said, just not their names. I was staying at a nearby motel for a couple of nights, then planning to do some tent camping in the national parks. I would made campground reservations and was looking forward to getting into some peaceful areas. This party was for fun, and I planned to relax and let loose for a change. Bill had arranged for a designated driver to take me back to the motel in case I had one too many. He made it clear he'd be disappointed if I didn't enjoy myself enough to need a ride. After a couple of hours of food, drinks, and good times, a familiar face approached me. I didn't know her name, but I swore I would seen her somewhere before. When I wasn't around anyone, she walked up to me. Her first word was, "Hi," but the voice and the face connected instantly. "Hi, Nicole," I said. It was Grace's sister. She had Grace's accent and a strong family resemblance. We'd met briefly at Grace's wedding 7 years ago. Grace had shown me a few pictures of her sister over the years, whenever the construction dust allowed. "I was wondering if I could have a quiet chat with you. I know this is probably at the top of your list." She smiled. "You know, right next to an unmedicated root canal." I chuckled. "Sure, why not?" I just had my eyes stopped, smiling. I would often joke that my heart had been torn out, but I knew she was serious. She pointed to a couple of chairs near the fence. "Could I get you a refill?" she asked, holding her own drink. "Why don't we both hit the coolers together?" I replied. She paused, smiling. "Thanks. For what? What did I do?" I asked, a little confused. "You're listening to me, and I think you understand that I'm serious." She picked up a light beer, and I flinched. "You're going to sit with me and drink bathwater?" I laughed. She shook her head, picking up a local craft beer instead, and we walked to the chairs. "Are you always this difficult?" she asked, smiling. "Nah, I just have standards when it comes to beer." We both laughed, but then I became serious. "How's Grace doing?" "I get her Christmas cards, the ones about her self-discoveries, but not much else." Nicole took a sip of her beer and looked down. "She's doing okay," she finally said. "You know she doesn't know you're here, right?" "Yeah." Didn't plan to see her, either. Nicole looked thoughtful. Grace, she's changed a lot. Getting away from Stone Valley helped her, but she's had to face a lot too. It's been hard. I listened as Nicole shared more of Grace's story, filling in pieces I hadn't known. It didn't change anything, but it helped me understand. It was good to know she was doing better. For a while, we just sat there in silence, listening to the sounds of the celebration, the laughter of children in the distance. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally moving on. Nicole continued to share more about Grace's journey since our split, and I listened, processing every detail. Since she moved here, Grace started dealing with a lot of old wounds, Nicole explained. She's worked through well. She's had to confront things from before you ever knew her. There were things she never told you about, things she buried so deep she didn't think they mattered. But they did. I raised my eyebrows, feeling a bit of shock but mostly curiosity. What things? Nicole hesitated, looking down at her drink before speaking. Grace was well. She was abused by a teacher in high school. She was just a kid, barely 14. It was a dark time for her, and her family just brushed it under the rug. In those days, it was easier to get the guy to disappear than press charges. I took in a breath, surprised. Grace had never shared anything like that with me. I felt a pang of regret, wondering if things might have been different if she'd opened up. Nicole continued, Grace never wanted to revisit it, especially after her first marriage failed. She tried so hard to be the perfect wife, thinking it would make up for her past. That first husband of hers, Todd, was a nightmare, physically and emotionally abusive. She didn't talk about it with you because, well, it was buried. But moving out here has been a chance for her to finally confront everything. And she's done it. Therapy, her family, reconnecting with her faith, it's all helped her heal. Nicole took a deep breath, looking up at me with a new intensity. She's different now, Travis. I don't know if it means anything to you, but she's changed. And she wanted to say thank you for helping her start on that journey. You gave her the courage to face herself, even if she had to lose you to do it. I nodded, letting the words sink in. Grace's betrayal had been devastating, but knowing that she was finally working through her pain brought a strange sense of closure. I didn't feel anger anymore, just a quiet acceptance that maybe things had turned out the way they needed to. We sat quietly for a moment, watching as families laughed and kids ran around. Then I heard a voice I hadn't expected. I would like to thank you, too, said Grace, her voice soft but steady. She stood there with tears in her eyes, trembling slightly. I immediately stood up, knocking over my beer in the process. Oh, hell, I muttered, catching myself. She looked at me, her face a mix of hope and apprehension. I took a breath and reached out my hand. Grace, how long have you been standing there? Just a minute, she replied, trying to smile. Heather invited me tonight. I didn't know you'd be here. She looked down, nervous. But I'm glad I ran into you. I felt a mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. Can I get you a drink, Grace? I was just introducing your sister to some local craft beer. Maybe you'd like one? She laughed softly, wiping a tear from her cheek. Sure, that sounds nice. We walked over to the coolers, and I picked out a bottle for her. As I handed it to her, I realized we were both ready to let the past stay in the past. We found a quiet spot, away from the crowd. For the first time, there were no words left unspoken, no bitterness between us. She told me about her life in Denver, about finding work she loved and reconnecting with herself. I told her about my plans, my travels, and the peace I would found being on my own. As the evening wore on, I felt the weight of old hurts lifting. By the time we said goodbye, I knew we were both finally free. As I watched Grace walk away, back to her family, I realized that I was walking away too. Only this time, I wasn't looking back. Thanks for watching. Can forgiveness truly bring peace after betrayal? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. I'm Ryan Carter. I was married to Megan Carter for about 12 years before things went south. Naturally, when it all collapsed, I was the one who got blamed. That's the typical outcome in our biased divorce courts. The guy gets blamed, and the ex-wife walks away with full custody, ready to poison the kids' minds against their father. The laws in this country seem tailor-made to punish men while letting the women walk away scot-free. As I mentioned, we were married for 12 years. We had 2 kids, a 12-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter. I thought everything was great. I loved my wife, and I believed she loved me. Our kids were smart, athletic, well-adjusted, and attractive. Alyssa was my little princess, and Ethan was a friendly, athletic boy. I was doing well as a software engineer, and Sarah had a stable job as a financial consultant. We both worked out to stay fit, and we were both relatively good-looking. Alyssa was my little girl, through and through. She idolized me, and I was wrapped around her little finger. She had a knack for math and science and decided to follow in my footsteps to become an engineer. She got her driver's license the day she turned 16. Just like me, she loved driving. Since she was 10, she would join me in the garage, handing me tools while I worked on my cars. I'm a proud gearhead, and my passion lies with old Chargers. She shared that love with me. We spent countless weekends at car shows, practically glued at the hip. I was handy around the house, too. Alyssa loved helping me with home improvement projects. I taught her plumbing, electrical work, drywalling, and painting. She was there with me, even when I poured a new concrete slab next to my workshop. Although she turned to her mother for girl talk, she came to me for everything else: homework, friendship drama, advice on boys, you name it. We were honest and open with each other. When she got into trouble, she called me first. Alyssa was my girl, and Sarah had her mama's boy. Ethan wasn't as interested in cars and mechanics as Alyssa. He was a good student, but science didn't excite him much. He excelled in English literature and had aspirations of becoming a lawyer. Sure, we hung out, but he was more attached to his mom than to me. Sarah had been acting a bit off for the last few months. Nothing major, but she seemed distant and would zone out occasionally. I asked her a few times if everything was okay, but she brushed me off each time. Usually, I enjoyed when she brushed me off, but this time, it wasn't the same. Something was definitely off. It was a Friday evening when it happened. I had just gotten home from work at around 6:30 p.m., my usual time. I noticed that Sarah was already home, but something was unusual. There were no dinner smells wafting through the house, and Alyssa didn't come down to greet me. I assumed the kids were still out with friends. I set my briefcase in my office and went upstairs to change into more comfortable clothes. When I walked into the bedroom, I noticed that my wife had laid out her little red dress, sexy underwear, stockings, and heels. Clearly, we were going out that night. It would have been nice if she had given me a heads up, but I hadn't made any other plans. Sarah was still in the bathroom, putting on her makeup when I walked in. "Where are we going tonight, babe?" I asked as I started taking off my dress shirt. "We're not going anywhere," she replied. That was odd. "Then why are you all dressed up with a sexy outfit laid out on the bed?" I asked. "I'm going out, not us." "Really? And where exactly do you think you're going dressed like that without me? Also, where are the kids?" I had a sinking feeling. The kids are staying with friends tonight. I'm not sure where my date will take me, but I probably won't be home until tomorrow morning. "What do you mean, your date, and you won't be back until morning?" Exactly what I said. "I'm going on a date tonight, and if all goes well, you'll be spending the night with him," she said calmly. "The hell you are. You think for a second that he'll let that happen? If you want to go out and spread your legs, you can wait until the divorce is final. Stop being stupid. There won't be a divorce. I'm just doing this once, then everything will go back to normal. I need this night. We've been married for 12 years, and I need to prove to myself that I'm still attractive to other men. If you love me, you'll let me have this night, and it won't even be a blip on the radar. If you really loved me, you wouldn't even consider doing this. I do love you, but I need this. I'm getting older, and I need to feel attractive to other men, especially younger men. Alex is about 12 years younger than me. He's been flirting with me for the last 8 months, and I finally decided to take him up on his offer. It's just one night of intimacy to boost my confidence. I've noticed a few lines and gray hairs creeping in, and I need an ego boost. I don't need this, and am not going to put up with it. You remember the part of the wedding vows about forsaking all others? You go through with this, and we're done. Don't be ridiculous. This is just a one-time thing. After I get back, I'll never do it again. I promise. Are you serious? After breaking the vow you made to me in front of everyone, do you think I'd ever believe a simple promise you make in private? If you go through with this, we're done. You walk out that door, and you'll be meeting with a lawyer as soon as possible. Don't be an idiot. There won't be a divorce. They'll come back and be the loving wife I've always been. If you try to divorce me, they'll fight it tooth and nail. You'll lose the house, most of our assets, and you'll get full custody of the kids. They'll make sure your visitation is limited, And it'll make the kids believe it's your fault for breaking up the family. It'll turn them against you. I was stunned. You claim to love me, yet you do all that to me? Absolutely. I do love you. But if you try to divorce me, they'll fight you. I don't want to lose you, but am warning you about the consequences. I just need this one night to feel sexy again. And what happens in a few more years when you start feeling old again? What about the next time you feel the need to prove you're still attractive? Is it because he's got a big tool and everyone says he's a great lover? I promise it won't happen again. And yes, there's been some gossip. I admit I'm curious, but it's just sex. There won't be any love involved. You have nothing to fear from him taking me away. It's a one-time thing to get this out of my system. Maybe you'll even learn something to spice up our love life. If you follow through, I already told you the consequences. If you cancel now, we can go to marriage counseling and work on saving our marriage. Don't be stupid. We'll be fine. If you insist on counseling, we can talk about it when I get back tomorrow. She continued getting ready. I changed into jeans and a t-shirt and left the room. She came downstairs a little later, dressed and ready. She had her clutch in hand and was checking herself in the mirror by the door. I was sitting in the living room, listening for the car horn outside. He's here. They'll see you in the morning, she said as she walked over to kiss me goodbye. I turned my head, and she ended up kissing air. She frowned at me. Fine, be that way. Once you get over this, everything will go back to normal. She turned and walked out. I made one last attempt. If you walk out that door, we're done. Think really hard about whether this is worth throwing 12 years of marriage away. She turned back to look at me. I'm not throwing anything away. They'll be back, and everything will be normal again. She opened the door and walked out. I began crying for the loss of my marriage and the woman I had loved exclusively for the last 20 years. 16 years of marriage, a year of engagement, and 3 years of exclusive dating. I had no idea how she could do this to me. She never expressed dissatisfaction. We had a decent love life, and she never mentioned wanting more. I would have given her more if she asked. We hadn't been fighting about anything. Sure, we had disagreements, but we talked them out and came to mutual agreements. I decided what I would do if she went through with this. After about 30 minutes, I finally got up and went to work on my plan. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was the best I could come up with at the time. Our house was fairly large, a 4-bedroom place with a master bedroom, Alyssa's room, Ethan's room, and a large guest bedroom. The guest bedroom was a second master with a private bathroom. We used it for family visits or the kids' sleepovers. Now it would be my temporary bedroom. It took me about 2 hours to move out of our old bedroom and into my new one. I had no illusions about what would happen in our divorce. This was a no-fault state, meaning that the divorce laws were written by feminists intent on screwing over men. It didn't matter if the husband was the innocent victim, the wife would get the house, kids, child support, and maintenance, leaving the husband with all the bills. She gets the gold mine, and he gets the shaft. After setting up my new living quarters, I went to my home office and logged into our online banking. A few years ago, I had opened another account in just my name. It wasn't for anything shady, I just wanted to buy her gifts without her finding out in advance. She had access to all our finances, and sometimes she would check them and ruin the surprise. So I opened a new account strictly for purchasing her presents and keeping the surprise. I decided to repurpose that account now. She knew about it, but she didn't have access. First, I transferred half of our checking and savings into my personal account. Next, with the remaining money in the joint account, I paid off and canceled all our credit cards. Then, I applied for a couple of new cards in my name only. Yes, I should have paid everything off before transferring the money, but I figured it was better to pay back whatever the court ordered me to than to try and collect anything from her. I would transfer my direct deposit from work to my personal account on Wednesday. I would also call our broker and have our investments split on Wednesday as well. Having done what I could, I poured myself a bourbon on the rocks and headed up to my room for the night. I finished my drink as I got ready for bed. It wasn't a good night's sleep. I had gotten used to sleeping next to my wife. The bed felt empty without her. My mind wouldn't shut off. I kept wondering what I could have done to prevent this. Should I have tried to stop her from leaving, physically restrained her, gone out to confront the guy? Would going to jail have been worth it? It was a long night. I dozed off fitfully, but not much. I finally decided to get up as light began streaming through the window. Still tired, I showered to wake myself up. After shaving, showering, and brushing my teeth, I put on jeans and a t-shirt and went downstairs. I ate breakfast and drank a couple of cups of coffee while reading the newspaper. It was 9:30 in the morning when Sarah walked back into the house. I was in my office, looking at apartments to rent. I had already researched lawyers and made an appointment for Wednesday afternoon. "Good morning, honey. I'm home, just like I promised," she cheerfully greeted me as she entered the house. I ignored her. Over the night and this morning, my rage had been building over what she had done. As I drank my coffee, I realized that I had done nothing to deserve her disrespect. I also realized that there was nothing I could have done to prevent it. This was all on her. If I had managed to stop her date, she would have done it another time. Some people say you can't stop loving someone suddenly. Maybe they're right. But you can turn that love into hate. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. Hate still involves emotion. Marriage counselors might save a marriage by turning hate back into love. But with indifference, there's no chance. All the love I had for my wife yesterday before I came home had now turned into hate. It was easy. All I had to do was focus on her lack of respect, her threats, and her dismissive attitude. I had several hours to stew on all that. "Honey, where are you?" "I'm home, just like I said. I even freshened up before coming home for you," she called out as she searched the house for me. "Oh, there you are," she said as she opened my office door. "I'm back, and now everything can go back to normal," she continued as she approached my desk, arms outstretched to give me a hug and kiss. I shoved her back. "Keep your filthy, disease-ridden lips away from me, you disgusting woman. God only knows what you've touched or what filth has been in that mouth of yours." Her eyes widened in shock. I had never spoken to her like that in all the years we'd known each other. I continued before she could respond. "You need to go to the clinic and get tested for every STD out there. I want to see a notarized clean report before I ever let you touch me again. As for intimacy, I wouldn't touch your disease-ridden body with a 10-foot pole, even with a dozen condoms." Over the top? Probably. Did I care? No. Her expression shifted from shock to anger. I had hoped for remorse. "I can see you're still dealing with your bruised ego. I'm going to our room to take a nap. I had a long night and need to rest. Hopefully, you'll calm down and we can talk later. I expect a full apology for your rudeness this morning." With that, she stormed out of the room. I couldn't help but smile, anticipating her quick return. I wasn't disappointed. "What the hell did you do?" she screamed as she charged back. "Where are your clothes? Where are all your toiletries? What the hell do you think you're doing?" she ranted as she burst back into my office. "What do you mean?" I asked calmly. "Everything is exactly where it's supposed to be. What are you talking about? Your closet is empty, your drawers are empty, and your spot on the vanity is empty. What do you mean everything is where it's supposed to be?" As I said, my clothes are neatly hanging in my closet or folded in my dresser. My toiletries are right where they belong in my bathroom. "No, they're not. I just told you your stuff is not in our bedroom," she exclaimed, exasperated. "Ah, I see your confusion. You're still mistakenly thinking of your bedroom as our bedroom. I just told you everything is where it belongs in my bedroom." "You mean?" "Yes, I moved out of your bedroom. They'll be staying in my new room until I find an apartment and move out." I thought about telling her about the finances, but decided to let her discover that on her own. No sense spoiling the surprise before I could take care of the investments. Her eyes narrowed in irritation. "We'll discuss this later. I'll give you a week to get over your little fit, then I expect you to move everything back, and we'll go back to normal. Not until I see that notarized report saying you're disease-free." I shot back as I turned my attention back to the computer. I stayed in my office for most of the day. The kids came home early in the afternoon. I wondered how long it would take them to realize there was a problem. I found a few apartments that looked promising, so I filled out the forms and scheduled viewings for Friday. I then printed out our financial statements. I would need those for the lawyer on Wednesday. While I wasn't under any illusions about having the house sold, I figured getting a value on it might help in the settlement. Theoretically, she would only get the equity value. Wishful thinking, but still. I spent the rest of the day researching divorce laws in our state. I knew I was going to get screwed, but at least I'd have some idea of how bad. That would help me plan, if nothing else. Dad, dinner is ready, Alyssa said, poking her head into the office. Okay, sweetie. Sarah was smiling brightly when I entered the kitchen. It was obvious she was trying to kill me with kindness, showing me what I'd lose if I didn't accept what she had done. She had gone all out, dressing up, doing her makeup, and cooking my favorite meal. As I entered the kitchen, she handed me a glass of wine. I poured you a glass of wine, she said, leaning in for a kiss. I saw the hurt in her eyes as I leaned away from her. I took the glass, walked to the sink, poured it out, and set the glass on the counter. Then I got a tumbler from the cabinet, added ice, and poured myself some bourbon. The kids at the table couldn't have missed that. I moved over to the table, sat down, and started chatting with them, completely ignoring Sarah. Dinner was tense. I tried to keep up the conversation with the kids, but it was obvious there were serious problems. I didn't help that I didn't put any food on my plate, much less eat anything. These were my favorite dishes, but I passed the bowls and platters along without looking at them, focusing on the kids as I sipped my drink. Dad, are you going to eat anything? Ethan finally asked. No, not hungry, was all I said. After the most awkward dinner ever, I simply got up, refilled my drink, and headed back to my office. I didn't bother helping clear the table. About half an hour later, I shut down the computer, grabbed my truck keys, and left the house for a quiet restaurant. After dinner, I went to a bar for a few drinks. It was late when I got back home. I saw the light was still on in Sarah's room, so I made sure to close the door to my room loud enough for her to hear. I locked the door, then slid a chair under the knob. As I was getting ready for bed, I heard her try the knob, then knock. She tried to get me to open the door for about 5 minutes before giving up. I was up early the next morning. It was going to be a football day. There were 3 games on, and I intended to watch them all. Yeah, there were weekend chores to do, but I decided to ignore them. Screw it. I wouldn't be living here much longer, so Sarah could find someone else to do it. I had drunk most of the pot of coffee and was making omelets for breakfast. I had already finished mine when Alyssa wandered into the kitchen. Hey, sweetie, omelet? I asked. Sure, Dad. Thanks. She got her juice and sat at the table while I cooked her food. A few minutes later, Ethan appeared. I told him I'd make his as soon as I finished Alyssa's. She was eating when Sarah came into the kitchen. I poured the last cup of coffee into my cup and turned off the pot. She grabbed a cup, then looked at the empty pot. You couldn't leave a cup for me? She glared at me. Pot's right there. You know how to make it. Whatever. So you're making omelets? Made them. Just finished, but feel free to make yourself one. I answered as I served Ethan's plate. I used the last of the ingredients for his. I had already put everything away. Screw her. Having taken care of the kids, I left the kitchen. It was just before noon, and I was in the living room watching the morning game. Sarah came in with a plate and a bottle of beer. She set them down on the coffee table. I brought you some lunch and a beer so you wouldn't miss any of the game, she said cheerfully. Without looking at her, I took my foot and knocked both the plate and bottle onto the floor. She stood there, mouth open in shock. Just then, a commercial came on, so I got up, went to the kitchen, and got myself a beer. I didn't clean up the mess. She brought it, so she could clean it up. I didn't care if it stained the carpet. I wouldn't be living there much longer anyway. We need to discuss this, Sarah began. Shut up. The game's on, I replied. For God's sake, you need to do something about your attitude. The kids have already noticed. Bound to happen. I'm sure they'll notice after I move out. Oh, get over yourself. You're not moving out, and there won't be a divorce, she insisted as she stormed away. It started later in the afternoon, during halftime. Alyssa and Ethan came into the room together. They sat on the couch to face me. Dad, what's going on between you and Mom? Alyssa began. Well, you might as well know now. Your mother and I are getting a divorce. This has nothing to do with either of you. We both love you. This is just between your mother and me. But why? Ethan asked. Because your mother did something I can't accept. She did it even after I told her my feelings, but she still did it. She wasn't even the least bit remorseful. You mean when she went out on her date Friday night? Alyssa asked. You know about that? I was surprised. Yeah. Mom told us you weren't happy about it. So you know she cheated on me then? No, she didn't. She told you about it beforehand. So it wasn't cheating. She didn't sneak around behind your back to do it, and that was the only time she ever did something like that, Ethan explained. Yeah, Dad. Besides, it was just one night out of the 20 years you two have been together. She said if you really loved her, you'd let her have that one night and move on, Alyssa added. I was shocked. It also hurt that my daughter didn't even bother to understand my position. She had sided with her mother and wouldn't listen to me. Really? How about if she really loved me, she wouldn't even consider being with another man? Come on, Dad. It was just one time, and she promised it wouldn't happen again. Okay, let's talk about her promises. About 12 years ago, she made a vow to me before God, our families and friends. She vowed to forsake all others. There were no exceptions in that vow. The vow lasted until death do us part. In case you haven't noticed, neither of us is dead. If she can break that solemn vow so easily, how can I believe any promise she makes in private? Yeah, but you also vowed to stick with her in good times and bad, Ethan argued. True, but your mother breaking her vow broke the contract and released me from my vow. We don't understand why you'd break up the family over one night, Alyssa said. Why are you saying I'm breaking up the family? Why am I being blamed for what she did? Mom isn't leaving. She wants to move past this and go back to normal. You're the one leaving and making such a big deal out of everything. If you leave, you're breaking up the family, Alyssa insisted. It didn't get better after that. I tried to explain my position, but they weren't listening. They weren't interested in my opinion. Sarah had spent the last day filling their heads with her lies. All they knew was that Mommy did something she needed, and Daddy didn't love her or them enough to accept it. She convinced them that Daddy's fragile ego was causing him to leave and break up the family. It was Daddy's fault because he couldn't give Mommy one small thing she needed for her happiness. It was just one night out of 7,300 nights, 12 years at 365 days per year, plus the 4 leap years. They stormed out when it was clear I wasn't going to accept their position. I managed to watch the rest of the game in peace. As the game ended, I smelled dinner being prepared. It was another of my favorites. I sat there watching the post-game show as I waited for the night game to start. Luke came in to tell me dinner was ready. I grabbed my truck keys and headed for the door. Where are you going? Dinner is on the table, Luke asked. I'm going to the restaurant to watch the game. I'll eat there, I replied. But Mom fixed. They'll be back after the game. I might stay out for a while. I did hang out after the game. The burger was good, and the beer was better. I only had 1 beer per quarter, so I was good to drive. Besides, it was only a short drive home. Everyone was in bed when I got back, so I went in my room, locked and blocked the door, and went asleep. The mess by the coffee table had been cleaned up. That made me smile. Wednesday morning, I was up early and out of the house before anyone got up. The first thing I did at the office was call my broker. I explained I was getting a divorce and needed him to split our investments evenly. He created a new account in my name and moved half our investments there. Next, HR. I took Sarah's name off my retirement account and put Alyssa and Ethan as my heirs. I also gave them my new bank account information to reroute my paycheck. Finally, I told my boss I was getting divorced and would need some time off for meetings with my lawyer, court dates, and such. He was understanding. My lawyer told me what I already knew. I'd be getting screwed. There was a slim chance I could get custody, but it depended on where the kids wanted to live. Based on yesterday's conversation, I wasn't counting on it. The only reason for a guy to have a lawyer in a divorce was so the lawyer could apply lube before the screwing, otherwise, he'd get drilled without it. I had him start the paperwork and asked that Sarah be served at work on Friday. I didn't go home after work. It was Wednesday night football, so I went to the restaurant. Tacos were $3 for $1. I had 6. I ignored the text messages and calls from Sarah. I did respond to Alyssa, letting her know where I was. Her response wasn't pleasant. I got the evil eye from all 3 when I got home after the game. I went to my office and closed the door. By the time I went to bed, everyone else was already asleep. Friday morning, I was up early and out of the house before anyone was up. I took the afternoon off to look at apartments. I found a nice 2-bedroom unit and put down the deposit. I could move in on Saturday. A trip to a secondhand store got me a couch, table, and chairs. They'd be delivered on Saturday afternoon. I liked the bed I was using, so I was taking that along with everything in my home office. They were eating dinner when I got home. I chuckled when I noticed they didn't set a plate for me. That was fine, I wasn't going to eat it anyway. I made a huge sandwich, grabbed chips and a beer, and went to my office. Geez, Dad. Why are you being such a jerk? Alyssa exclaimed as she came into the office. Well, Alyssa, simply put, your mother cheated on me. She completely disrespected me, then threw it in my face. I won't put up with that. I clearly told her what would happen if she went through with it. She knew, and she did it anyway. You can't seriously be breaking up the family over that. Come on, it was nothing. It was just sex. Alyssa, one day you'll be married. Imagine how you'd feel if your husband told you one evening that he had a date with a younger, prettier woman and was going to spend the night with her. Well, I'm sure I wouldn't like it, but if he promised to come back to me and it was a one-time thing, I'd hope I'd love him enough to get past it. Besides, if he told me first, it wouldn't be like he was cheating. Oh, sure. Do me a favor when you get married. Look directly into your groom's eyes as you say your vows. As you're looking into his loving eyes, imagine the love in those eyes turning to devastation as you tell him you are going to be with another man. With that, I turned my back on her and went back to work. Wednesday evening was an ambush. Both sets of parents were there when I got home from work. People often joke about in-laws, but I got along well with hers. They welcomed me into the family like the son they never had. Her dad, Jacob, was a gearhead like me. His only problem was his love for Chevys. He had a pristine '70 Challenger. Okay, so he had poor taste in cars, but I overlooked that. I got along with my parents as well. We weren't one of those dysfunctional families. My parents were loving and supportive. Sure, we had disagreements, but we agreed to disagree. So I walked into the house and saw the ambush. I was confused. I understood why her parents would be there. They were her parents. But why were my parents there? That would seem counterproductive to her. My parents would be on my side. If she was trying to get me to accept her infidelity, why would she have anyone over who wouldn't be on her side? You probably figured out what took me several more minutes to understand. John, Jacob started the intervention. I want you to know that Laura, Sarah's mom, and I are disappointed in what Sarah did. That being said, we think you're overreacting. Yes, she went out and was with another man, and that was disrespectful to you, especially the way she did it. But it was just one mistake. You two have been together for 20 years. You have 2 wonderful kids. Think about that. Surely you can get over this one mistake. You don't need to tear your family apart over one mistake. A small mistake? Seriously? This wasn't a small mistake. She didn't accidentally stumble and end up with his, tool in her. This was planned. They probably planned it at least a week in advance. Then she used me an hour before leaving, giving me no chance to stop it. This was a deliberate plan to betray me. Son, my mom chimed in. She didn't cheat on you. She told you about it first. Huh? What? First off, you're right. She told me. Told me. She never asked. She said she was doing it, and I had no say. Even when I objected strongly, she didn't care. Speaking of telling, I told her what would happen if she went through with it. John, my dad tried. I understand your pain and anger, but think about the family. We love you, son. We'll be here to help you heal, but think about what you'll do to your family. Sarah still loves you, and she says she won't do it again. We all think with counseling and effort, you can get past this. Tearing your family apart isn't the answer. We raised you to be a good man. You need to man up and keep your family together. Don't do something stupid that will hurt your relationship with your family. Think about your mother and me, too. Those are our grandchildren, and we'll do whatever we need to keep our relationship with them. I stood there, stunned. My parents were taking her side, telling me to overlook her betrayal. I couldn't take any more. I turned and walked out of the room to my bedroom. Sarah tried to follow me, but I shut the door in her face. 10 minutes later, I had changed into jeans, a casual shirt, and boots. I walked right through the living room and out the front door. They were still trying to talk to me as I walked past. I didn't acknowledge them. I got in my truck and went to the restaurant for dinner and a few beers. The house was quiet and dark when I returned about 4 hours later. Friday were the same. I ignored Sarah, and my kids remained mad at me. I was surprised Sarah hadn't noticed the credit cards were no longer working. I figured she'd notice when she went shopping on Saturday. Friday evening, I had been home for about an hour. I was in my office going through some things, deciding what to take tomorrow and what to get later. Sarah opened the door and walked in, wearing a transparent nightie, stockings, garter belt, and heels. I have to say, she looked fantastic. The kids are spending the night elsewhere. It's time to end this nonsense and come to bed with me. I want you to take me back. I looked at her for a minute. No thanks. Besides, I haven't seen a report from the clinic verifying you don't have any diseases. Stop being ridiculous. I need you back in my bed. Your temper tantrum isn't helping. Now come on. Lonely, and I need to be with you. Not interested. If you don't, they'll have to call Alex again. So much for a one-time thing. Damn it. It was a one-time thing. But if you keep rejecting me, you're pushing me to someone else. Have fun. Let me know if you're bringing him here so I can leave. The steam coming out of her ears took a few minutes to clear. About half an hour later, I heard the front door slam, and she peeled out of the driveway. I took the opportunity of an empty house to pack. I took apart the bed and loaded it in the truck, along with most of my clothes. I'd sleep on the sofa in my office tonight. With everything I wanted loaded in my truck, I fixed a bourbon on the rocks and relaxed. The sofa wasn't the most comfortable thing, but it was okay. Early the next morning, I was at the leasing office, getting the key to the apartment. It took some time, but I got everything out of the truck and into the apartment. Thankfully, a couple of neighbors helped. No one was home when I returned, so I had a neighbor's teenage son help me load up my desk and office furniture. My computer, printer, and accessories went into the cab. I looked back at the living room and thought, screw it, I'm taking the recliner too. I guess no one came home until evening or bothered to look in my office or the spare bedroom. I'm surprised they didn't notice the missing recliner, though. It was evening before my phone rang. Seeing it was Alyssa, I answered. Daddy, where are you? I'm at home, sweetie. No, you aren't. Your office is cleaned out, the bed and dresser in the spare bedroom are gone, and your recliner isn't in the living room. Plus, your truck is gone. You're right, I'm not there. I'm at home. I don't live there anymore. I moved into an apartment. Maybe after the divorce, I'll get another house, but this will do for now. God, Dad, I can't believe you're being such a jerk about this. I thought you loved us. I do love you, sweetie. I always have and always will. Just not enough to not abandon us. I'm not abandoning you. You can still see me all you want. They'll still take care of you and your brother. You are abandoning us. You left us and are breaking up the family. Your mother broke up the family. I told her this would happen if she went on that date. She did it anyway, but she thought you loved her enough to get past that. And I thought she loved me enough not to do it. Fine, whatever. Then she hung up. Yeah, the divorce was a nightmare. She fought it every step of the way. Counseling she wanted me to pay. I refused. I argued if she wanted it, she should pay. That was one of the few arguments I won. What a waste of time. The counselor didn't like me. I think it was because I told him I was ordered to attend, but the judge didn't say I had to participate. I suffered through all 12 sessions before the counselor gave up. She fought over everything. That funny poster in the garage she hated? Suddenly, she couldn't live without it. The Bud Light lamp I left behind in the office? She hated it, but it was suddenly the centerpiece of her new decor. It was all to make the divorce as hard on me as possible, and she made it difficult for me to see the kids. Finally, the judge granted the divorce. I had to keep paying half the mortgage. She, of course, kept the house. $1,600 a month in child support, but I got Wednesday evenings and every other weekend visitation. The $1,000 a month for 5 years in spousal maintenance pissed me off the most. It would end if she remarried within that time. I wasn't holding my breath. I found out. She moved Alex in before the divorce was even final. So yeah, half my paycheck went to her. I cashed in some investments and bought a small house in serious need of repairs. At least I got it cheap. It even had a half-acre lot. Thankfully, I managed to sneak all my tools out of the garage the week after I moved out. I refused to discuss them. Most of them I had before we met. When she pushed, I started talking about her jewelry and expensive clothes. The house had electricity, gas, and water. The roof was on, and the walls were standing. That was good enough for me. I moved in and began working on it in the evenings and weekends. Visitation? Yeah, I was supposed to have visitation. A few times, I did. It was a disaster. Sarah did everything possible to interfere. The kids were busy. They went on weekend trips with friends. Funny how that always happened on my weekends. Oh, Alyssa has dance practice on Wednesday. Ethan has a huge test on Friday and needs to study. The few times I had Wednesday evening visitation, the kids were hostile. They still blamed me for everything. Even though I explained my side, they had Sarah filling their heads with lies 247. After the third time, they flat out told me they didn't want to see me anymore. Yeah, I could have forced it, but what would be the point? Forcing them to see me would only cause more resentment. I sent gifts, cards, and letters for birthdays and Christmas. They were all returned unopened. I continued to send my monthly checks. They were cashed, but I never heard a word. Graduation? I assumed they graduated, but I never heard anything. I sent a registered letter about the college funds I set up for them. I heard back no thanks. Sarah poisoned my kids against me, just like she said she would. I concentrated on work, the house, and that's it. I didn't go out or do much. It's amazing how much money you can save doing that. As if all that wasn't bad enough. Hey, Mom, I said when she answered. John, how are you? She responded cheerfully. Doing okay. Anyway, I haven't heard anything about Thanksgiving. Are you hosting it again this year? There was silence on the other end. Mom, you still there? Oh, well, this is awkward. Yes, we are. But Sarah, her parents, and the kids are coming. She's also bringing the new man in her life. We felt it would be too awkward for you to be there with them. After all, the kids are still angry at you for abandoning them, and you being there with Sarah and her new man would make everyone tense. Seriously, Mom? You're abandoning your son on Thanksgiving and inviting my ex-wife and her boyfriend instead? Well, we want to keep our relationship with our grandchildren. Besides, this is your fault. You should have kept your family together instead of tearing it apart. How about coming over for Christmas Eve? Your father and I will spend Christmas Day at Sarah's house, but we can celebrate with you the day before. Forget it. You don't have a son anymore. Save it for the cheating witch and her flying monkeys, I mumbled as I ended the call. I spent Christmas Eve at home watching Die Hard and ignoring calls and texts from my mom. I wasn't in the holiday spirit. I just stared at the packages I sent my kids a week ago. They were returned yesterday. I did get a wedding announcement after 5 years. Sarah married Alex the weekend after my last maintenance payment. Ethan's 18th birthday was a year earlier, so I was done with child support. Now I was free of my former family and commitments. I celebrated by getting drunk. Not proud of it, but screw it. I worked hard and gave them all the love I could, only to be rejected. Now that my obligations to the witch and her 2 ungrateful kids were done, I decided to put them out of my mind and move on. Well, except for one thing that always bugged me. I had to keep paying half the mortgage. That ended when Ethan graduated from high school, but my name was still on the deed. I think Sarah thought the house was hers free and clear. The divorce only said she could live there until the kids graduated. Now, all bets were off. I had a right to half the assets, and that was a big one. I contacted my lawyer. At the time of the divorce, the house was appraised at around $210,000 with about $150,000 in equity. That was 5 years ago. Since then, we paid the mortgage and property values went up significantly. After some research, I estimated the appraised value was around $330,000, with equity around $300,000. We only had $30,000 left on the note. Why was I doing this? For the money, of course. Who couldn't use an extra $150,000? Besides, it would piss Sarah off. She loved that house, and giving me a penny would drive her crazy. I was looking for any payback I could get. This would reimburse me for the maintenance and mortgage payments I made for her. The call came about a week later. John, what the hell is going on? Well, Sarah, not much. Just working and fixing up my house. What's going on with you? I have to admit, I'm surprised you're calling to check on me. This is the first time we've spoken since the divorce. You jerk. I'm not calling to check on you. I'm calling because a realtor just came to my house to look at it and get my signature on the listing contract. Oh, that. Well, it should be obvious. Since both our names are on the title, She would need your signature to sell it. What sale? I love this house and am not selling it. Then when can I expect the check for my half of the equity? Nice try. I got the house in the divorce. No, you gotta live here until Ethan graduated. That happened last month. Now, we can sell it and split the proceeds, or you can buy out my half. If you think I'll give you $150,000 for a house that's rightfully mine, you're crazy. Well, that proves I'm not crazy. I'm not asking for 150,000. You could have done that 5 years ago. Now, with equity around 300,000, my half comes to 150,000. Considering all the expensive furniture you had to have, let's round that to an even 160,000. You're insane. I'm not giving you a dime. She screamed as she hung up. Yes, I laughed after she hung up. Yes, my lawyer took his cut, but it was worth it a few months later to see her face as the judge ruled in my favor. I even convinced the judge to make her pay court fees and my lawyer for taking her to court over something that should have been settled. The house appraised for more than I estimated. With the furniture value, I ended up with 180,000. They bought me out instead of selling. I found out later that most of the money came from Alex, who had more money set aside than I thought. I guess he had investments or something. About a year later, I finished restoring my '71 Mustang truck. Yeah, I made it more radical than intended, but it was a beast. A big block 454 with a bored-out carburetor, new forged crankshaft, tin 1 pistons, and a heavy cam. I had the heads ported and polished, the valves done with double springs, and a blower to top it off. I chromed the valve covers, polished the aluminum on the blower, and used steel braided hoses. Popping the hood almost required sunglasses. The first time I took it on the road, I almost wrecked it. I was on the freeway and decided to punch it. Big mistake. The back tires broke loose instantly. I barely held it straight before letting off the gas. Note to self: press down slowly on the accelerator. I drove more carefully after that. A few weeks later, I saw an ad for a car show open to the public. Thinking it would be fun, I filled out the form and paid my entry fee. When the day came, I loaded up the '71 Mustang and drove to the park. I checked in and was assigned a spot. As I set up, I noticed a really nice '70 Camaro parked beside me. I set up my shade structure behind my truck. A couple of chairs and a cooler finished my setup. That's when I noticed the attractive redhead setting up chairs behind the Camaro. Yes, I said redhead, singular. She looked about my age. One significant thing, I didn't see a guy with her, or a ring on her left hand. Of course, I looked. Good morning. I like your car, I said cheerfully. She looked up. Thanks. I like your truck too. Thanks. Been to many of these? This is my first. I mean, I've been to car shows as a spectator, but this is the first time I've entered anything. I'm John, by the way. This is my third time entering. My ex took it to a few before, though. I'm Kate, she said. When you're done, why don't you join me in the shade? I have a cooler full of drinks and could use any info on these shows I can get. We hung out most of the day. We occasionally got up to talk about our vehicles, but it was a pleasant day. No, I didn't win any awards, but I had fun. I learned she divorced her husband 3 years ago because she caught him cheating. He was cheating with his boss wife. She made a deal she'd give him all the videos if he signed the Camaro over to her. She said it hurt him, and she wanted him to keep his job to keep paying child support and alimony. It was a double win for her. Besides, his boss was a jerk, and she didn't care if his wife was cheating. We had such a nice time that I didn't want it to end. When the show wrapped up, I offered to take her to dinner at a nearby seafood restaurant. She accepted, and we drove over. I didn't want to be a downer, but she asked, and she told me her story. I hit the highlights. I did tell her my kids took my wife's side and wanted nothing to do with me. You mean she cheated, and your kids blame you for divorcing her? Kate was astonished. Yeah. I tried to explain, but she had already poisoned them against me. Kate put her hand on my arm. I'm so sorry, John. You seem like such a nice guy. You didn't deserve that, she said sincerely. I changed the subject to something more pleasant. We ended up talking and laughing for another hour. We seemed to have a real connection. We exchanged numbers, and Kate seemed agreeable to meet again. So Kate and I did get together again. It was the next weekend. I called, and she enthusiastically agreed. Dinner and dancing. I got a kiss on the cheek when I walked her to the door. After 2 more dates, I invited her to my house and cooked her dinner. I had learned to cook pretty well after my divorce. The Food Network, some YouTube videos, and trial and error. I make a good lasagna, so I went with that. She seemed to like it. She really liked my house, but said it definitely needed a woman's touch. I wouldn't have argued if she had asked. The next weekend, I was invited to her place. Kate's cooking put mine to shame. Even Sarah wasn't as good as Kate. I couldn't help it. I know it's rude, but I couldn't stop eating. I finally had to apologize for making a pig of myself. She laughed and said that was the biggest compliment you could give a woman who loves to cook. 2 weekends later, it happened. I took Kate to dinner and then to a dance club. We had been dancing for a while when a slow song came on. We pressed together, swaying to the music. We had graduated to some pretty hot makeout sessions a few weeks ago. She leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Take me home." Frankly, I was surprised. I thought we were having a great time, but now she wanted to go home. I pulled back to look at her. She must have seen the look on my face and giggled. "Oh, you silly man. I meant take me to your home." "Oh, well then." Thankfully, I had my regular truck and not the 73. I'm not sure I could have kept the tires on the road if I was driving the 73 home. We ended up doing it 3 times before we fell asleep. I cooked her breakfast before driving her home. A few months later, I asked, and she said yes. It was a simple ceremony before a judge. She moved into my house after we got married. Life was great. Yes, there were disagreements. Yes, we had our differences. She was still a woman, and I was still a man. We had to say no occasionally. Still, she respected me, and I loved her as much as she loved me. The surprise phone call came about a year later. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello," I said as I answered. An excited woman's voice said, "John? It's Alyssa. I have great news." "Really? It's really good to hear from you." It really was good to hear from her. Maybe she was reaching out to reconnect. "And getting married. That's great, sweetie. I'm so happy for you. I want to be at your wedding." "Oh no. Alex is paying for the wedding, and he'll be walking me down the aisle. Also, since it would be awkward for you and Mom to sit together, you wouldn't be in the front pew, but I really want you there." As in the jerk that 3-0 you call Mother cheated on me with? She married that piece of... "Look, Alyssa, I'm trying to reconnect here, and I wanted to reach out and have you at my wedding. Besides, after you left, she and Alex started seeing each other more, fell in love, and got married. It's actually your fault. If you hadn't abandoned us, she and Alex would never have continued seeing each other." "Okay, I can see you're still under the impression your mother did nothing wrong. So I can't attend for 2 reasons. First and foremost, I can't support a marriage I'm sure will fail. You're more likely to cheat on your husband, just like your mom cheated on me. If he's someone I'd approve of, he'd kick you to the curb as soon as he found out. Second, you've stolen the last great honor a father has and given it to a dirtbag who knowingly seduced a married woman. That shows me what a shallow, self-centered you've become. Fine. If that's the way you're going to be, don't expect to see your grandchildren. If you raise them like you are, I want nothing to do with them anyway." "Really, Dad? Mom was right. You really are a jerk." And that's the last I heard of my daughter when I hung up the phone. Oh, she sent text messages over the next few days, but I deleted them. There were voicemails, but I deleted them after hearing the first few words. It was all the Samami ex-wife's words in my daughter's voice. She made her choice 10 years ago, and she could live with it. This olive branch was an insult. She could take the olive tree and shove it up her. Well, so much for any relationship with my former daughter. Pretty sure there will never be one with Ethan either. Yeah, it hurt. They still blamed me for what their mother did. I set my phone down and moped out to the shop. Instead of wallowing in sorrow, I lost myself in working on the 64 Chevy pickup I pulled out of a field a few months ago. This one wouldn't be as radical as my 73. I wanted to drive this one more often. I was rebuilding a 350 slightly beefier than stock. I never even saw Kate sneak around the corner and pick up my phone. I didn't realize she was home. Let's see the story from Alyssa's side. I was so pissed off at my dad. Here I was, trying to reach out to him, and he had the gall to talk to me like that. It was his fault our family was torn apart. I try to be nice and invite him to my wedding, and he just throws everything back in my face. I hoped he'd finally take responsibility for what he did to our family. I looked down and saw my phone ringing. I didn't recognize the number, but there were a lot of calls like that when planning a wedding. Hello? Is this Alyssa Johnson? Yes. Can I help you? Yes, you can. You can stop calling my daddy and being a cast iron witch to him. He's the best man I've ever known, and he doesn't deserve a spoiled brat like you calling him and reminding him of what a waste of space you are. You and your family are a waste of breathable air. Who the hell are you? My name is Jenny Williams. I'm your sister. My mom married your former dad, and he adopted me. I love him with all my heart, and I'd never disrespect or dishonor him. You're an insult to daughters everywhere. I know what happened. Your mom disrespected her husband and went with another guy. The sad part is you're okay with that. My biological dad cheated on my mom, and she kicked him to the curb. You can bet if my mom ever cheated on my dad, I'd be right there helping my daddy carry her out with the trash. Even though he isn't my biological father, he's the most decent, caring, compassionate person I've ever met. I'm thinking of sending your mom a thank you card for being stupid enough to let him go. If it weren't for her stupidity, I wouldn't have him as a father now. You can also tell your grandparents they have another granddaughter, but I have no desire for a relationship with anyone who'd reject their son for a cheating woman and her backstabbing kids. There's one more thing you can do. When you say your joke vows, look in your husband's eyes and think about when he cheats on you. When he does, call me so I can laugh at you. Have a crappy life, sis. She hung up. I stared at the phone in shock. First, I was surprised to hear my dad got married. You'd think he'd invite his kids. Then, hearing I now had a younger sister, a strange thought crossed my mind. I couldn't help thinking she sounded a lot like me before Mom talked to Ethan and me about how Dad was leaving and breaking up the family over one minor thing. I thought at first Dad must have had a good reason and considered living with him instead of Mom. Then Mom explained how she was feeling and how Dad didn't love us enough to keep the family together. The more I thought about it, the more I thought Jenny was just repeating the lies Dad told her, so I didn't think much of it. A few months after the wedding, things began to settle down. My life with Kate was everything I could have hoped for. She was supportive, loving, and we both enjoyed a quiet life together. We spent our weekends working on our cars, going to shows, and simply enjoying each other's company. The house was slowly becoming a home, with Kate's touches making it more welcoming and comfortable. Despite the peace I found with Kate, the memories of my previous life would occasionally haunt me. The anger, the betrayal, the hurt, all of it still simmered beneath the surface. I tried to push it aside, focusing instead on the life I was building now. But some nights, I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying those last conversations with Alyssa and Ethan. The bitterness of their rejection was a wound that hadn't fully healed. One day, out of the blue, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Alyssa. I hesitated to open it, unsure of what it might contain. Finally, I took a deep breath and unfolded the paper. Dear Dad, I know it's been a long time since we last spoke, and am not sure if you'll even read this letter. But there's something I need to say. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not understanding your pain. I'm sorry for not listening to your side of the story. And most of all, I'm sorry for blaming you for something that wasn't your fault. I let Mom's words influence me, and I didn't give you a fair chance to explain. I see now how wrong I was. I know it's too late to undo the hurt I've caused, and I can't expect you to forgive me. But I want you to know that I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened, and I realize now that I should have stood by you. If you're willing, I'd like to try to rebuild our relationship. I understand if you don't want that, but I needed to reach out and tell you how I feel. Love, Alyssa. I stared at the letter for a long time, unsure of how to respond. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to let go of the past and move forward. But another part of me, the part that still held on to the anger and betrayal, wasn't so sure. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer, deciding to think about it later. Days turned into weeks, and I still hadn't responded. Kate noticed my mood and gently asked what was bothering me. I showed her the letter, and she read it carefully. What do you think? I asked her after she finished reading. Kate looked thoughtful for a moment before replying. I think Alyssa's trying to make amends. It doesn't erase what happened, but it takes a lot of courage to admit when you're wrong. If you're open to it, maybe it's worth giving her a chance. I don't know, Kate. She hurt me deeply, and am not sure I can just forget that. I understand, John, but holding on to that hurt is only going to keep you trapped in the past. You deserve to be happy, and maybe reconnecting with your daughter could be a part of that. I nodded, knowing she was right. Kate always had a way of seeing things clearly and helping me find the right path. Finally, I decided to write back to Alyssa. Dear Alyssa, thank you for your letter. I appreciate your apology and the courage it took to write it. I won't lie, what happened between us hurt me deeply, and it's something that will take time to heal. But I also believe in second chances and am willing to try to rebuild our relationship. Let's take it one step at a time. I'm open to meeting with you, and we can talk about everything. Just know that I need time to process all of this. I hope we can move forward together. Love, Dad. I mailed the letter the next day and waited. It was a difficult decision, but I knew that if I didn't at least try, I might regret it later. A few weeks later, I received a response from Alyssa. She wanted to meet, and we agreed on a quiet restaurant in town. The first meeting was awkward, with both of us unsure of what to say. But as the conversation progressed, we began to open up, slowly rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. Over the next few months, we met regularly, and our relationship began to mend. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of tension, but we were making progress. Eventually, Ethan reached out as well, and we began the same slow process of rebuilding our relationship. I wish I could say that everything went back to the way it was, but it didn't. The past couldn't be undone, and the scars of those years would always remain. But I learned to let go of the anger and focus on the future. Kate was my rock throughout it all, offering support and understanding as I navigated the difficult path of reconciling with my children. In time, I found a new sense of peace. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and I had people who loved me. The betrayal of the past had shaped me, but it didn't define me. I was stronger, more resilient, and ready to face whatever the future held. And as I looked at Kate, the woman who had stood by me through it all, I knew that I was finally where I was meant to be. The future was uncertain, but I was no longer afraid. I had survived the worst, and I had come out the other side stronger, wiser, and ready to live the life I deserved. Well, that's the story so far. What do you think? Is there ever a right way to rebuild after betrayal, or should some relationships be left in the past? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this one. Until next time, you'll have to make your own dinner tonight. That's the way my wife greeted me when I got home from work that Friday evening. Sophia walked into the living room fiddling with an earring. I'm going out dancing with friends, she said. I stared at her in disbelief. She was wearing a short black dress with a plunging neckline held up by 4 spaghetti straps that crisscrossed over her shoulders. When she turned away from me, I couldn't help noticing how the folds of her skirt fluttered around her 0027 thighs. Then I saw the open back, which made it clear that Sophia wasn't wearing a bra. You're going out dancing dressed like that? Why? What's wrong with what I'm wearing? It's very stylish. I felt my anger growing but knew I had to be careful about what I said next if I wanted any chance of getting through to her. There's nothing wrong with your outfit, but you're showing a lot of skin, don't you think? You're going to attract the wrong kind of attention, especially from men. She gave a little snort. If Chloe and I dance with any men while we're out, I'm sure they'll be perfect gentlemen. You can't be sure of that. For all you know, one of them could be the ring collector, and you sure don't want to attract his attention. The ring collector was the nickname the media had given to the serial killer who'd been terrorizing the area. Had sexually assaulted and strangled 8 young women in the last year. The only clue the police had was that each victim was missing her rings when she was found, and the speculation was that the madman was building a grisly collection. Sophia's mocking response came in a little girl's voice. Ooh, Daddy, is the boogeyman going to get me? Then her voice returned to its normal contemptuous tone. It's so pathetic that you're trying to control me with ghost stories. Before she could elaborate, a honk from a car horn sounded out front. I don't have time for this, she spat. Chloe's here. Don't wait up for me, and with that, she was gone. God damn it, I swore, standing alone in the living room with my fists clenched in helpless anger. This kind of disrespect had grown increasingly frequent of late, and I didn't know how much longer I could take it. I loved Sophia, but our relationship seemed to have been in a downward spiral for a long time now. What happened to us? I wondered. How did it get so bad? We'd been crazy in love when we got married after graduation, And Sophia had been so supportive when I went to business school for my MBA by taking a secretarial job to support us. She enabled me to get my degree in 18 months. It hadn't been easy on her, and I would always be grateful for her sacrifice. Then, while I was trying to line up a job, my father had died, leaving his business to my brother Jack and me. Preferred Precision Moldings made custom plastic parts for industrial use. The business had been in a slow decline for a while, but Jack and I thought we could make something out of it. Jack took over running operations, and I handled sales and general management. It's a specialty business built on relationships and performance. Slowly, Jack and I began rebuilding our reputation as a quality supplier. She never said anything, but I knew Sophia was disappointed I didn't wind up in the executive suite of a Fortune 500 company in a major city. Nevertheless, she endured my long hours and meager paychecks without complaint. However, when she got the opportunity to move into advertising, she jumped at it and almost immediately showed an aptitude for the work. At first, that had been a boost for us. Her growing paycheck really helped our financial situation, and her growing self-confidence boosted her attitude. Over time, however, things between us seemed to cool. She spent more and more time with her new work associates, especially Sarah, a divorcee I thought was a bad influence. But my concerns were of little or no importance to Sophia, as tonight's confrontation showed. Well, to hell with her, I thought. They'll be damned if I'm going to sit around home waiting for her to come prancing in who knows when. With that, I gave my little brother Luke a call. Hey Luke, are you doing anything tonight? Okay, well how about meeting me at Ray's Pub tonight? Sophia's gone out again, and I would like some company. Ray's Pub was nearby, and I liked to go there because it wasn't too noisy, and they played jazz in the background. They also made good burgers to go with the booze. Luke was waiting for me when I walked in, and he already had a beer waiting for me. From the sound of your voice, he grinned at me. I figured you could use one. What's Sophia done this time to get you so upset? I still thought of Luke as my little brother because he was 2 years younger than me, but had grown up to be every bit as tall as me. When we were growing up, I used to win our wrestling matches every time, but I doubt I could do it today. Now, he was my wingman and my confidant. I took a big gulp from the mug in front of me and then looked at him. What makes you think Sophia's done something to upset me? He shook his head knowingly. It's always Sophia lately. I don't know what's going on with you two, but that woman is definitely getting under your skin big time. Isn't that obvious? When he didn't answer, I sighed and shrugged my shoulders. Everything was fine until she went to work for North Star Advertising. She was excited about the opportunity, and things were really good between us for a while. But the more time she spent in that world and with those people, the worse things have become at home. It's like she doesn't have any respect for me anymore. Nothing I do is good enough for her, and she takes every opportunity to get away from me. Frankly, I'm starting to wonder why I married her. Luke stared at me and cupped both hands over his chest. I know exactly why you married her, bro. I shook my head in disgust. You always were a horn dog anyway. I'm not getting a lot of action in that area either these days. I don't know how much more of this I can take. Luke turned and signaled to the waitress for another round. After she brought it, he leaned toward me and asked in a low voice, "Do you think Sophia's running around on you?" I took another big swig, and my face curled into a scowl. That's exactly what I'm thinking. The only thing is I can't figure out if she's having an affair or just picking up random guys when she's out with that witch Chloe. I could feel my anger building, and I took another swallow to try to cool down. Looking back, things between us started going sour after she took that new job. Now she's always working late or going into the office on weekends. That makes me wonder if she's having an affair with somebody at work. But she also keeps going out with Chloe, and she won't tell me where they are or when they'll be home. Last weekend, she didn't get back till after I had gone to bed, but she insisted on getting a shower when she got home. She said she wanted to get the smell of cigarette smoke off her, but that sounded like an excuse to me. Luke looked at me carefully. Are you two headed for divorce? I slammed my hand down on the table hard enough to make the beer mugs jump. Damn it, that's what's really getting to me. The disrespect is bad enough. I couldn't tolerate her cheating on me, but if I divorce her, we'll have to split all our assets, and she'll wind up with half my share of the business. Damn, Mickey, that really sucks, especially now that things are starting to pick up. The order you landed last week could really pay off for us big time. I know, bro, and the idea of her walking away with a big chunk of everything we've been working and slaving for really chaps my ass. By now, I was in full ramp mode, and as the evening wore on, I lost count of how many beers I had. It didn't seem like it was that many, but I never got around to having anything to eat. At some point, I vaguely remember Luke helping me out to my car and driving me home. He half carried me to the bedroom and dumped me on the bed. I kicked off my shoes, and that was the last thing I remembered. It was almost noon on Saturday when I finally woke. Oh God. My head hurt so bad, and there was a bitter taste in my mouth. I struggled to the bathroom, filled a glass with water, and took a handful of aspirin. Then I hurried to the kitchen to make myself some breakfast before all that alcohol burned a hole in my stomach. After I finished eating, I called my brother. When he heard my voice, Luke laughed. I was wondering if you were up yet, man. You really tied one on last night. Yeah, well, thanks for getting me home safely last night. I hope I didn't do anything crazy. How much did I drink? Anyway, I don't ever remember blacking out like that, even in college. He laughed again. It's all part of the service. Just remember that you owe me. Then his voice changed tone. So, what did Sophia say when you finally got up? I sat up straight. Damn it, Luke, I haven't seen her. She sure wasn't in bed when I woke up. I got up from the table and began to walk through the house while I talked to him just to make sure. I don't think she came home last night. She's definitely not here now, and her car is still parked in the garage. That witch must have stayed out all night. Goddamn it, I'm not going to tolerate this kind of disrespect. Hold on, big brother. She could have a good explanation. Come to think of it, she probably spent the night at Chloe's place. Why don't you give a call over there? No, she's got a phone. Let her call me. I'm tired of having to track down my own wife. I know where you're coming from, bro, but don't make any decisions until you two have had a chance to talk it out. I hear you, but to be honest, I hope she doesn't show up anytime soon, because I'm so mad at her right now I don't know what I would do. Anyway, thanks again for last night. Now let me go do some yard work. Maybe that will cool me off some. After I hung up, I changed into my work jeans and headed out to the garage to get the lawnmower. When I sat down to pull on my work boots, I was surprised to find them covered in mud. Where the hell did that come from? I wondered. I'm usually pretty scrupulous about cleaning up after myself. I like mowing the yard because it gives me an opportunity to think without a lot of distractions. But this time, I couldn't stop thinking about Sophia and how angry I was at the way she'd been acting. This isn't just disrespect. It's downright contempt. I really don't care whether she's having an affair or not. I'm not going to stand for this kind of treatment from her. I finished up the yard and checked my phone just to make sure she hadn't called and I would missed it. No missed calls. No text messages. I watched a baseball game on television, then went to the kitchen and fixed myself some dinner out of leftovers. After that, it was back to the TV to watch a movie I would already seen once, good guys fighting zombies. Lots of violence. That suited my mood. The later it got, the madder I grew. Finally, I switched off the TV and grabbed my phone. All right, what's your win? I called her, but all I got was a message that the phone was not in service. She turned off her phone, so I couldn't call her. Just unbelievable. I got undressed and went to bed, but it took me forever to drop off to sleep. In the morning, I woke up disoriented. My skin felt clammy, and the sheets were damp. Even worse, my mood was dark and troubled. I felt as though I had been dreaming all night, and the dreams were really disturbing. I couldn't remember many details. All I knew was that I had been intensely angry at Sophia. No, not anger. What I felt was hatred. It was actually a little frightening to remember how strong my emotions were. Even after I had had coffee and breakfast, I couldn't shake the terrible memory of those dreams, and I started to feel guilty. I tried calling Sophia again, but got the same out-of-service message. Swallowing my distaste, I called Chloe. It was pretty obvious that I would awaken her because it took a few seconds for her to realize who I was. Chloe, is Sophia there with you? No, she's not. Was she with you yesterday? No. I thought she went home. Is she not there? Chloe, this is important. When was the last time you saw Sophia? It was Friday night. We were out dancing at Groove Nightclub. I rolled my eyes at that. Groove Nightclub was a real meat market. What time did you leave there? There was a pause. Well, I left sometime after midnight. Did Sophia leave with you? A longer pause. Actually, I sort of met a guy I was interested in, but Sophia was having a good time and wanted to stay. She told me she'd call an Uber when she was ready, so I left with the guy. So, you haven't seen or heard from her since? No, I haven't. Listen, you're starting to scare me, Mickey. You really haven't heard from her all weekend? Chloe, I don't have time to talk now. I need to try to find my wife. I hung up and cursed, then called Jack and told him what Chloe had said. Bro, that doesn't sound good. I think you ought to call the police and report her missing. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They'll let you know what they have to say. That proved to be a total waste of time. When I called police headquarters, the first thing the officer asked was when I would last seen Sophia. When I told him Friday night, he cut me short. Listen, buddy, you can't even file a missing persons report until she's been gone 3 days. Damn it, officer. I haven't seen or heard from her all weekend, and neither has her best friend. I'm afraid something may have happened to her. He said, don't worry too much. I've seen the same thing dozens of times. The odds are you'll hear from her soon, and everything will be okay. Just give it a little more time. I hung up. Maybe he was right, but I wasn't reassured. This just wasn't like her. What if she's been in an accident? But if she was, the doctors would call me, wouldn't they? Still, I figured it wouldn't hurt. So I called the local hospitals. Sophia wasn't checked in at any of them, and they didn't have any unknown female patients. Another dead end. I went out and picked up some food for myself, then hurried home to eat it in case Sophia showed up. While I waited, I tried to distract myself by watching TV again, but I couldn't concentrate. Finally, I gave up and went to bed. In some ways, Sunday night was worse than Saturday. Again, I found myself sleeping restlessly. What's worse, this time I kept having the same dream I was lost, trudging through a dark forest, weighted down by a heavy burden. I wasn't angry. Instead, all I felt was hopelessness and despair. The last time I woke up, it was still dark outside, but I got up anyway because I couldn't bear feeling so depressed. It took me eating breakfast and drinking several cups of coffee before I started to shake off the sense of foreboding. At 7:30 a.m., I called Jack. Listen, I'm going to be late this morning. I still haven't seen or heard from Sophia. I'm going to check with her office when it opens just in case she shows up there. If she doesn't, I'm going to police headquarters and demand to see someone. Okay, I'll hold down the fort here. Good luck, bro, and keep the faith. A half hour later, I called North Star Advertising and got Frankie's assistant. When I first heard about Frankie, I got a little jealous at the idea of Sophia having a male PA. Sophia just laughed at me and told me I was being sexist. It wasn't until I met Frankie at a company event that I got Sophia's joke. Frankie was short for Francesca, and like her nickname, Frankie was one of the least feminine women I would ever seen. She wasn't overweight, but she was tall and blocky with an extremely manly figure. Truthfully, she looked like she could play linebacker on some college teams. She was also strong. The first time I shook hands with her, she gave me a manly grip that startled me with its strength. The other thing I discovered about Frankie was that she was absolutely devoted to Sophia. After seeing the two of them together a few times, I decided Frankie was probably gay and had a crush on my wife. I asked Sophia about it once, and she just laughed. Of course, she's a lesbian, but it doesn't bother me. Actually, it makes her perfect for my PA. She'd do anything for me. She's more like a servant than an employee. Hearing Frankie's contralto voice on the phone broke my reverie. Hi, Frankie. It's Mickey Duncan. Is Sophia in the office yet? Hello, Mr. Duncan. It's good to hear your voice. No, your wife hasn't gotten in yet. Shall I have her call you when she arrives? Yes, please have her call first thing. Something in my voice must have sounded off to Frankie. Is everything okay, Mr. Duncan? To my dismay, I found myself telling Frankie everything how we'd argued when Sophia went out on Friday and how I hadn't seen or heard anything from her all weekend. Frankie listened quietly until I would finished. When she finally spoke, her voice was hushed and her tone was troubled. I'm so sorry to hear that. Her voice dropped even lower. I can't talk about this now, but there are things going on around here that aren't right. If I were you, I would go see Darren Browder and find out what's going on with Sophia. Suddenly, her voice resumed its normal tone and volume. Yes, sir, that's right. Mr. Browder will be in the office later this morning. Goodbye now. I sat there holding the dead phone and feeling my blood pressure rising. I hadn't liked Darren Browder from the first time I met him. He was one of those slick, good-looking guys who always seemed too full of himself. He never missed an opportunity to brag about his advertising agency or himself, nor was he shy about denigrating anyone else in the process. Maybe those characteristics made him a good businessman, but as far as I was concerned, they made him an insecure, unattractive human being. So, what had Frankie been hinting at when she said I ought to direct my questions to Darren? I had a sneaking suspicion I knew, and I meant to confront him as soon as possible. But first, I needed to get to police headquarters. The sergeant at the front desk wasn't very helpful, but I guess I made enough of a fuss that eventually a woman came out to see me. I'm Detective Emma Marshall. She introduced herself after the sergeant explained my problem. She looked young and inexperienced to my eyes, but at least she was willing to listen. So, I followed her back to her desk. I went through my story again, but she didn't seem particularly responsive when I gave her a picture of Sophia. She leaned back in her chair and covered her mouth to yawn. That was the last straw for me. Look, if you were out partying too hard over the weekend, how about letting me talk to someone who gives a damn? She rocked forward and her eyes flashed. If you think I don't care, Mr. Duncan, you're badly mistaken. I wouldn't have taken this job if I didn't care deeply. And for your information, the reason I was yawning is I was on duty the whole weekend, and I spent most of last night trying to track down a mentally ill young woman who wandered away from her group home. So back off and tell me again why you think your wife isn't just another runaway spouse who's wasting police time? I felt like crap after that, but I straightened up and tried to explain why I was so concerned about Sophia's disappearance. She's gone out with her girlfriend before, but she doesn't stay out all night, and she's never been gone for a whole weekend. How often does she go out without you? I squirmed in embarrassment. Lately, it's been almost every weekend. Emma made a note on the pad in front of her, then she looked at me carefully. So, how would you describe your relationship with your wife? I looked down at the desk, sighed. Look, I'm not going to lie to you. It's been a little rocky lately. I looked at her. It's almost like she's lost respect for me, you know? Do you two ever fight? Yeah, we've had some pretty heated arguments from time to time. Did you ever hit her? I was shocked. God, no. I would never do that. She waited for me to go on, but I couldn't think of anything else to say. Finally, she sighed. All right, Mr. Duncan, they'll add your wife to our missing persons list and we'll circulate her photo to our street patrol. If we find anything, they'll call you. I hadn't wanted to say anything, but it just popped out of my mouth. You don't think there's any chance she ran into this ring collector guy, do you? Look, I know you're worried, but you can drive yourself crazy imagining unlikely scenarios. In the great majority of situations like this, the missing spouse just decided they wanted some time alone. After a while, they realize they can't work out their problems long distance, and they come home. My advice for you is to stop worrying and go back to work. Let the professionals find your wife and bring her home. I nodded reluctantly. Emma reached into a little pouch and pulled out a card. Erase my name and number. If she comes home or you hear from her, call me anytime, day or night. She handed the card to me. We really do care, even if it may not seem that way to you. I took the card and nodded sheepishly. All right, Detective Marshall, thanks. After I left, I called Luke to let him know what I was doing, then headed straight for North Star Advertising. I would had my suspicions about Darren Browder anyway, and Frankie's cryptic comments made me want to confront him even more. The receptionist let me in because she recognized me, and as I walked past Sophia's office, I paused to raise my eyebrows at Frankie in a silent question. She shook her head negatively. All right, I said quietly, then it's time I have it out with Browder. She grabbed my hand and squeezed it. Good luck, she whispered. I walked down the hall to Browder's office, rubbing my fingers. Damn, that woman is strong. Oh, Mr. Duncan, Browder's secretary exclaimed when I walked up to her desk. Is he in? I asked, and she frowned. Yes, but he's busy right now, and wait, you can't go in there. But I had already walked past her, and when I saw Browder on the phone, he spoke hurriedly into the handset. They'll have to call you back. After he hung up, he stood and pasted a false smile on his face. Well, Mickey, this is a pleasant surprise. Come in and have a seat. He waved me toward the big couch on one side of his office. I sat down and leaned toward him intently. This isn't a social call, Browder. I want to know what's going on between you and my wife. For a moment, I thought I saw his gaze waver, but his smile stayed firmly fixed on his face. Ah, Sophia, he said. What an addition she's been to the business. She brings a real lust for every challenge working here presents. Time and again, I've seen her take a big problem in her grasp and squeeze it into a satisfying conclusion. In fact, just last week, it was my pleasure to administer her performance evaluation right on that couch. I can assure you, she was satisfying in every way. He gave me a smirk. I'm very grateful to have her working under me. The more I listened and watched that gloating smile, the angrier I got. That son of a... He was bragging about screwing Sophia into my face. As I pushed down on the couch to stand up and confront him, my fingers slid between the cushions of the sofa, and I touched something unexpected. When I pulled it out to see, I found myself holding a flimsy pair of panties. I looked at them again and gasped. There was no doubt in my mind they were part of the set I would given Sophia last Valentine's Day. Browder calmly reached over and snatched them out of my hands. Well, he said. Looks like the cleaning crew has been enjoying their work more than I realized. He quipped. Just then, The door to his office flew open, and a uniformed guard stepped inside. "Ah, you're just in time." Browder nodded to the man. Mr. Duncan was just leaving. "Not so fast, Browder. You and I have a lot more to talk about." "Sorry, Mickey, but I'm afraid you've already taken up too much of my schedule." He motioned to the guard. "Please escort Mr. Duncan to the exit." The guard stepped to my side and gestured toward the door. I started to resist, but then thought better of it. As I strolled out of his office, I turned back to Browder. "This isn't over. Not by a long shot." I didn't see Frankie when I walked down the hall. Maybe it was just as well. When I got out to my car, I was still seething. After making sure I hadn't missed a call from Sophia, I pulled out the card that Detective Emma Marshall had given me and called her number. When she answered, I was so upset that I was spluttering. "Listen, you need to get over to North Star Advertising and interrogate Darren Browder. He's having an affair with my wife, and he may know something about her disappearance." She sighed. "So this is you going back to work and letting the police handle things?" I shifted uncomfortably. "Well, no, but I've had my doubts about that creep for a while now. Anyway, I wanted to see if Sophia had gone into work this morning." "Oh, so your wife's boss admitted having an affair with your wife?" "Well, not exactly, but he was mocking me about it. And anyway, I got proof, evidence. I told her about Sophia's panties stuffed down in Browder's sofa." "And you have the panties with you?" "No." Browder grabbed them out of my hand, but I'll bet they're still there. I heard her take a deep breath. "All right, Mr. Duncan, I want you to listen carefully and do exactly as I say." "Sure, anything." "I want you to get in your car and drive straight to your office. When you get there, I want you to bury yourself in your normal duties and stop playing detective. Do you understand?" "But what about Browder?" "Well, talk to him along with all the other people whose names you gave me. But if you go interfering anymore, you're more likely to get in our way than do any good. Now do you understand what I'm telling you?" I was the one to sigh. "Yes, teacher. I understand. They'll be good." She laughed at my tone. "Good boy. Now behave yourself." She hung up. After I got to the office, I had to tell Luke what had happened. When I described my conversation with Browder, he couldn't hide his expression. "It's a good thing you were there and not me. If he pulled that on me, I would have decked him." "Yeah, but I've already got Detective Marshall pissed at me as it is. There's no telling what she might do if I punch Browder." For the rest of the day, I tried to concentrate on work, but it wasn't easy. I would start thinking about Browder and his suggestive innuendos about Sophia, and my blood pressure would rise. Then I would begin thinking about Sophia, and I would grow even angrier. I was so distracted that I had a hard time concentrating on the business. As a result, I wound up working late to try to catch up. Then, I stopped at a fast food outlet on the way home and picked up something for dinner because I didn't want to be away if Sophia showed up. But she didn't. I guess the greasy food must have unsettled my stomach because once again, I tossed and turned all night. I dozed for a while and then woke up and rolled over. Every time I did, I would remember what I had been dreaming about. This time, my dreams were filled with Sophia and Browder. Sometimes, they were belittling me. Other times, they were locked in each other's arms and laughing at me. One time, Detective Marshall even showed up and began lecturing me. By the time my alarm clock went off at 6 a.m., I was glad to get out of bed. I had just finished my breakfast when the doorbell rang. "It's Sophia," I thought, and dashed to the door. But when I opened it, I was startled to see Detective Marshall standing there with a solemn expression. "Mr. Duncan, Mickey, I'm so sorry to have to tell you this, but I think we found your wife's body." I staggered backward, my voice catching in my throat. The possibility had always been in the back of my mind, but I would have been so angry at Sophia that I never thought we wouldn't have the chance to hash things out. What would happen? Her face was a mask. "Let's go sit down." She walked past me into the living room, and I followed blindly. When we were both seated, the mask slipped off to reveal compassion. "I'm so sorry, but it appears that she was assaulted and then strangled by the ring collector." I gasped. "It certainly looks like it. The MO was similar, and her rings are missing." I shuddered. Pain washed over me, mixed with anger at the maniac who'd done this terrible thing and anger at myself for the terrible things I had thought about Sophia before I knew what had happened to her. "Where was she?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "We found the body in Oaks River Park," she said. A chill gripped me. I played in those woods when I was growing up. I knew the area like my own backyard. I looked at the floor so Emma wouldn't see the uneasiness in my eyes. "Mickey," she interrupted my thoughts. "I really hate to do this, but we need you to come down to the morgue to identify the body." I looked up quickly. "You mean there's a chance it's not her?" She reached over and took my hand. You shouldn't get your hopes up. I'm afraid this is just a formality. There was nothing I could say to that. She offered me a ride, and I decided to take her up on it. At that moment, I wasn't sure I could drive. I would never been in a morgue before. It looked and smelled a lot like a hospital, except that nobody gets well and goes home, I thought morbidly. We went into the refrigeration room. Emma checked a list carefully, then opened a square metal door in a wall full of them, like opening a safe deposit box. She pulled the sliding table out and carefully unzipped the thick black plastic bag. When she pulled back the flap, I forced myself to look. It was her. The last time I would seen Sophia, her face had been twisted in contempt. Now her face was relaxed, and it was easy to remember how beautiful I would thought she was when we got married. The only difference was that her cheeks, her lips, her entire face, were a sickly off-white, the color of melted wax. I looked away, not wanting to remember her like that. Out in the waiting room, the detective surprised me. While we're here, there's something else you need to do. I looked up. I need to get a DNA swab from you. What? I don't understand. It's routine. When we do the autopsy, we need to have your DNA so we can rule it out if we find any of yours inside her. Okay, I guess if ITLL help find the monster who did this. It took no time for her to run the swab on the inside of my cheek, and then we were heading back to my house. Everything along the way looked completely ordinary, and nothing looked familiar at all. I turned to her. I guess I need to get started on the funeral arrangements. Her expression came over her face. It'll be a while before the body is released. They have to perform the autopsy, and then they'll hold it in evidence. They'll notify you. I couldn't think of anything to say to that. When she let me off at home, she made a point of looking me in the eye. We're going to find the man who did this, Mickey. He won't get away. I just nodded. When she left, I called Jack to let him know what had happened. Oh damn, Mickey. I can't believe this. It's like a nightmare. Listen, stay where you are. I'm coming right over to be with you. No, Jack, don't do that. I really need you to call everybody who needs to know and give them the bad news. I just don't think I can handle that right now. And besides, somebody needs to keep the business running. Just give me a little time to be alone. He tried to protest, but I eventually talked him into doing what I would ask. After Head hung up, I decided I needed to make a call one Jack wouldn't think about. When I told Frankie the terrible news, I braced myself for tears and worse. Instead, I heard her give a sharp intake of breath followed by silence. Just when I started to ask if she was all right, she suddenly cried out, "Oh, Mickey, I'm going to miss her so much." Then she wanted to know about me and how I was doing. I thanked her for her concern and told her I would stay in touch. After we hung up, I shook my head. I always knew Frankie was different, but that was not how I would expected her to react. Oh well, people process grief in different ways, I thought. Speaking of processing, I tried to probe my own feelings. The shock was starting to wear off, to be replaced by what? I haven't even cried, I realized. The more I analyzed my emotions, the more I realized I was still angry. Well, of course you're angry, I thought. You're angry at the maniac who assaulted and murdered your wife. But that wasn't all. I went back to our bedroom and looked at Sophia's closet filled with all her clothes. That's when it hit me. I'm still mad at Sophia. Maybe, I thought, I'm angry because she's left me alone. Even though that was hardly her choice, the more I thought about it, the more I realized I was still angry for the way she treated me. Disrespect was disrespect, and if she were still alive, she'd probably still be treating me the same way. I felt the heat rise in my body and knew I would touched on the raw nerve of truth. Her death hadn't changed the way I felt. I thought about her body lying out there in the woods, trying to generate some sympathy. I couldn't do it. You'll just have to wait. Maybe you'll feel different later. The rest of the day passed in a haze. I wandered through the house, doing little chores just to keep myself occupied. I noticed some things on the bookshelf that Sophia had bought, little knickknacks that she thought were whimsical, and I hated them. I threw them in the trash. At one point, I went to my computer to check my email, only to turn it off when I saw the dozens of inquiries and expressions of sympathy. I can't deal with that now. As it grew dark, I pulled all the drapes closed and turned off all the outside lights. I would heard once that was a sign that the family didn't want visitors. I knew I didn't want them. Not then. Maybe not ever. When I finally got ready for bed that night, it felt strange going to the bedroom knowing Sophia would never be there again. I mentally shook my head. Mickey, you're so screwed up. Strangely, I slept well that night, unbothered by ominous dreams. Maybe you're still in shock, I thought. I got up and had cereal and coffee for breakfast, then sat around trying to decide what to do next. Should I go into the office? Should I start answering all those emails? Should I just stay hidden for the day? Before I could drive myself nuts trying to figure it out, I decided to turn my phone back on. I hadn't wanted to talk to anyone yesterday, and as I expected, my voicemail box was full. I quickly scanned the list of callers and then jumped when my phone started to ring. Probably more condolences, I thought. But before I hit the ignore option, I noticed the call was from Detective Emma Marshall. I better answer. Mickey, her voice rang in my ear. I wanted to let you know right away we caught the ring collector. What? You're kidding me. What happened? The bastard tried to kidnap another woman, but this time, someone saw what was happening and called 911. We caught him before he could harm her. The excitement quieted in her voice. Look, I know it's not much consolation to you with Sophia gone, but at least we'll be able to get justice for her. No, that's okay. It's fantastic that you got him. I mean, I wish it could have been sooner, but at least he's not going to get away unpunished, and he won't be able to hurt anyone else. Thank God. I paused and thought for a moment. So what happens next? Sophia's in interrogation right now, and they tell me he's making a full confession. It'll probably be all over the news, but feel free to call me if there's anything in particular you want to know. Okay, Nora, and thanks for calling. I'm still having a hard time processing everything that's happened, but this really helps. The next few days were schizophrenic, trying to deal with Sophia's death on the one hand and feeling relieved they'd caught the monster who'd hurt her and so many others. But the calm after the storm was not to last. I was working in my office when there was a knock at my door. Before I could get up, the door opened and Emma walked in. She wasn't smiling. I have some bad news, Mickey. I looked up at her, a sinking feeling in my chest. We've been over your wife's murder with the ring collector. He says he didn't do it. I gaped at her. Sophia? Lying? Of course, he did it. Her expression didn't change. He's confessed to all the other murders. Mickey, he told us details that we didn't share with the public. But he swears he didn't kill Sophia. But that's not all, she continued, her tone serious. We found his collection of rings and accounted for all of them. He didn't have Sophia's. I shook my head, confused. I don't understand. There's worse news, Mickey. We ran a DNA test on him and compared it to the semen that was left in Sophia's body. It didn't match. But that's not the end of it, because we did find a match. I froze. Yours? No, that's impossible. I shook my head in disbelief. Mickey, it matched your DNA. I felt my stomach drop and everything around me started to spin. The world was tilting, and my knees felt weak beneath me. You've got to be kidding me, I muttered under my breath. Her gaze was steady as she spoke. Mickey, you're under arrest for the murder of your wife, Sophia Duncan. I looked around wildly. That's when I noticed the burly cop standing outside my door. Don't make this any more difficult than it has to be, Mickey, she urged. I heaved a desperate sigh, then reluctantly held out my hands for her to cuff me. Just then, Luke rushed to the doorway. What the hell is going on? Mickey, he yelled. I don't understand either, Luke, but I need you to get me a lawyer, okay? He nodded, his eyes wide with confusion. Yeah, I got a recommendation from the firm who handles our corporate work. His name is Maxwell. They said he's very experienced and has represented lots of criminals, Sue. I mean, well, you know, lots of people in your situation. I waved away the awkwardness. All I care about is if he can help me get out of here long enough that I can figure out what the hell is going on. The next few weeks were crazy. Sometimes the hours seemed to stretch on forever. Other times, whole days zipped past. I was indicted by a grand jury and arraigned before a judge, where I pleaded not guilty. For all that time, I was held in the city jail, slowly going crazy trying to comprehend what had happened to me. Maxwell, my attorney, wasn't very encouraging. He certainly knew his way around the criminal justice system, but he kept asking me to strike a plea bargain with the district attorney. I refused, which brought us to my bail hearing. I felt that if I could only get out of that cell, somehow, I could find out how I would been set up and by whom. The DA didn't want me out on bail at all. He cited the heinous nature of my crime and called me a flight risk. Maxwell pointed out that I had no prior criminal history and strong ties to the city. The judge compromised by setting bail at $1 million. Max, where in the hell am I going to get $1 million? All you have to come up with is 100,000. You can put up your business for it. I got a chance to huddle with Luke after the hearing. The business is half yours, so I hate to ask, but do you think we can do it? He didn't hesitate. No sweat, bro. I know you're not going to head to Mexico on me. Besides, he winked, If you do, you know we'll be coming after you. So, there I was that afternoon, sitting in my house, free on bail, desperately trying to imagine who could have killed Sophia and why. Max Maxwell had promised to comb through the evidence the state had against me to see if there were any chinks in the armor, but I figured that wasn't likely to solve my problem. I had to believe that Darren Browder was somehow involved, so I tried to puzzle it out. He and Sophia were having an affair. I was positive of that. Suppose Sophia became too attached, began making demands on Browder. Could he have killed her to get her off his back? Or what if Sophia started blackmailing him? That could have raised the stakes for him even higher. Who else? I thought back to the night Sophia disappeared. She and Chloe had gone dancing at that club. Chloe told me she had hooked up with some guy and left Sophia behind. But what if Chloe hadn't left? What if she and the other guy decided to have a threesome with Sophia and the whole thing went wrong? Maybe, but it sounded pretty far out to me. Speaking of far out, maybe I needed to think even further outside the box. There was one person I knew who seemed obsessed with Sophia Frankie. Could she have met Sophia that night and tried to persuade her to leave me? Could she have professed her love for Sophia and been repulsed? God knows Frankie was strong enough to strangle Sophia if she wanted to. Could she be the killer? But that's crazy. Sophia was sexually assaulted. The killer had to be a man, didn't he? But no matter what crazy scenario I imagined, they all came back to the fact that the coroner found my semen in Sophia. I didn't want to face it, but maybe I was the killer. Could I have done it and forgotten or blocked it out? As I thought back to that night, I started to remember things I didn't like. There's no question I got drunk that Friday, so drunk that I blacked out. But could I have awakened in the middle of the night, gone out, and done something so terrible that I didn't want to remember it? But how could I do something so evil, and then calmly do yard work on Saturday? Was I some kind of cold-blooded monster? Oh, that reminds me. Why were my work boots all muddy when I went out to mow the lawn? I'm always careful to clean up after my chores. What if Sophia had come home that night and I flew into a rage? Could I have assaulted her, strangled her, and then hauled her body out to Oaks River Park? The thought made me sick. Then I remembered my dreams, the terrible anger I would felt towards Sophia, followed by those ominous visions of dark woods and depression. But those were just my reaction to Sophia staying out all night. Weren't they? Weren't they? You've got to stop thinking like this, I told myself. You need to get out of the house and away from all these reminders of Sophia. I glanced over at the wall clock and saw it was after 5. So, I called Luke. Hey bro, how about meeting me over at Ray's Pub? I need somebody to help me make sense of everything that's going on. He agreed and was sitting in a booth in the back with a beer for me when I walked in. While we sipped on the first round, he brought me up to speed on what was going on with the business. Then, after he got us a second round, he encouraged me to talk about what was going through my mind. I've been racking my brain trying to come up with some explanation for what happened to Sophia. Someone else who might have done it, I said. I told him about all my wild theories and crazy scenarios, none of which explained why my DNA was the only one they'd found. Luke tried to encourage me. I've been thinking about that, Mickey. Maybe the lab guys made a mistake. Maybe they found your juice left over from the last time you and Sophia did it. I bet they found it and didn't bother to look any further. I don't know, Luke. That sounds pretty unlikely, and I don't know how I could prove something like that anyway. I shook my head, and the room spun for a moment. Damn, how many beers have I had? This is only my second, isn't it? Now I can't remember, he said with a grin. I rubbed my eyes. Luke stared at me. Are you okay, Mickey? Yeah, I'm fine. The beer just seems to be sneaking up on me. Maybe it's because I was dry the whole time I was in jail. Just then, I heard my cell phone ring, and when I managed to focus on the display, I saw it was Max Maxwell, my lawyer, calling. Hey Luke, I gotta take this. It's my lawyer. I stood up and staggered a little as I stepped out through the back door so I could hear better. I had to lean against the wall to steady myself. Hey Max, what's happening? He hesitated a moment, and I wondered if I sounded drunk. Mickey, he said, his voice tight, I just learned something that may help our case. I straightened up, the slight dizziness clearing for a moment. You know the DNA test the police did? How can I forget? Well, guess what? They only tested a small fraction of the DNA, because that's usually all they need to find a match. That's what they did with Sophia. The DNA and the semen was a match with yours, so that was enough. But they kept wanting to move, so I tried to prop myself more firmly against the wall. Okay, Max, but how does that help me? What if the killer has DNA that's almost identical to yours? My head was really swimming now. You mean I've got a clone out there? Or an evil twin? Have you been drinking, Mickey? This is not a joke. Listen to what I'm saying. I tried to think, but nothing happened. Then the door opened, and Luke came out. There you are, bro, he snickered. You better let me help you. He took the cell phone from me and put my arm around his shoulder. I passed out. My head hurt like hell, and there was a bitter taste in my mouth. I raised my head only to bump into the tree behind me. Oh well, looks like that dose of rye I gave you is wearing off faster than the first one, Luke muttered. The last time, I was afraid I would kill you, so I cut way back. He shrugged his shoulders. Actually, I would have preferred it if you'd kept sleeping, but oh well. I shook my head to clear it and then tried to stand. That's when I realized I was sitting on the ground, strapped to the tree behind me. Luke, what the hell is going on? Help me get free. I don't think so, bro, he said, his voice cold. I went to a lot of trouble to get you here. I don't understand what's happening. He walked over to stand in front of me, a sneer on his face. So, Harris, what's happening? You've been stricken by remorse about what you did to Sophia. So you came out to the woods where you killed her. You know they're going to convict you, so there's only one way out. He pulled out a gun from his pocket. You're going to take this gun, he said, holding up an automatic in his gloved hand, and blow your brains out. It doesn't get much simpler than that. I stared at him in disbelief. You were the one who killed Sophia? He laughed. I've been wanting a piece of your wife's fine ass for a long time. Bro, I've been following her to that club, and I saw how hot she looked when she was dancing. So, when you came whining to me that Friday about her going out with her 304 friend, Chloe, I knew just where they'd be. Then it was a simple matter to drug you. Take your sorry ass home, slip on your work boots, and then drive your car to Groove nightclub. When I got there, Chloe was just leaving with some sex hound. That left the door open for me to approach your loving wife. I threatened to tell you all about her cheating around and get her out to the car. One little love tap, and she was out like a light. When I got her out in the woods, I decided if she wanted to spread it around, there was no reason why I shouldn't knock off a piece too. Bro, you should have seen the panties that witch had on. She was planning to get laid, no doubt about it. So, I helped myself and it was fine. Let me tell you. But afterwards, she woke up and started screaming. I couldn't have that, so I shut her up permanently. I gasped in horror. A big smile came over his face. Truth is, I knew that was what was going to happen all along. That's why I set it up, so you'd be the one to take the fall. Looks like I did a pretty good job of it too. But you helped me. You agreed to put up the plan to raise bail. Why not? I wanted everyone to see what a loyal brother I was. Besides, he winked, I knew you weren't going anywhere. I was stunned at the transformation I was witnessing and horrified at the story he told me. As Luke continued to grin, I felt a sense of overwhelming disbelief and horror. Everything he was saying was like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. Every word that left his mouth made my blood run cold. The man I would trusted, my own brother, was the monster who had killed Sophia. But there was still a part of me that was in denial, struggling to make sense of everything. I was desperately trying to think of a way out of this mess. Listen, Luke, help me get these straps off, and we'll figure something out. You know that suicide idea won't convince anyone. I can't shoot myself tied up like this. No, you can't, he snickered, his voice low and mocking. But I can do it for you. No, Mickey, it will be obvious what happened. He grinned, and I saw a cold, calculating look in his eyes as he continued. I've got that all figured out. After I put a bullet through your temple, we'll just unwrap all this strapping so they won't find any marks on your body, then put the gun in your hand and fire a second shot off in the distance. They'll find you with the gun in your hand and powder burns on your fingers. With all that evidence, I don't think they'll even wonder why you didn't leave a note. His face turned hard enough to make me shudder. Enough talking, bro. It's time to finish this. Wait, Luke, at least tell me why, I asked, my voice shaking. Why do you really have to ask? All my life, I've been the little brother, the afterthought, second best. You were Dad's favorite. I was the disappointment. You were the star quarterback. I was on the second team. You got your MBA. I had to settle for technical school. Now, he was pacing back and forth, his anger building with every word. I thought maybe things would get better once I got out of school, but if anything, they got worse when Dad left the business to us. Mr. I've got my MBA became the president, and I had to settle for working in the plant. Luke, you're vice president of operations. Shut up, he yelled. Everybody knows who was in charge, and it wasn't me. Then his voice grew low and ugly. And when it came to women, you always had your pick. And who did you choose to marry? Just the hottest girl in the school. When you'd bring her around for the holidays, I used to go to bed and beat off thinking about her. Why couldn't I have someone like that? Why did you have to suck up all the attention, all the recognition? He shook his head as if throwing off a bad thought, but then his anger flared back up. But all that changes tonight. Bro, you're going to become a memory. But don't worry. They won't forget you. They'll remember you as the piece of shit who assaulted and murdered his hot wife when he found out what a cheating woman she was. They won't know whether to laugh or cry when they think about you. And he'll be the only one who knows the truth. I was speechless. My body felt cold, my hands trembling as I sat there, strapped to the tree, unable to escape. This entire scenario, this nightmare, felt impossible. But here it was, my own brother, ready to destroy me and pin the blame for everything on me. Then, as I continued to struggle against my restraints, a voice suddenly rang out, cutting through the tension. Police department. Drop your gun. We both looked up in amazement. From behind a large maple tree, the slim figure of Emma Marshall stepped out, her Glock leveled at Luke's chest. To my astonishment, Luke's voice changed completely. No, detective, you've got it all wrong. I followed Mickey out here and discovered he really was the killer. He came here to destroy some evidence, and I captured him. I was just about to call you guys a who, Emma said evenly, her voice calm and controlled. Jenkins, was the voice recorder on your body cam working? A uniformed cop stepped out from behind another massive tree. Yes, ma'am. I got every word of it, he said. Emma turned back to Luke. Luke Duncan, you're under arrest for sexual assault and murder. Now drop that gun and put your hands behind your head. Okay, you win, Luke said, his voice defeated. He started to raise his hands, but then, without warning, he lunged toward me, dropping to one knee and firing a shot at the patrolman. The officer went down, and as Luke swiveled toward Emma, I bent my knees and lashed out with both feet, catching him on his hip. He lost his balance and sprawled on the ground with an angry shout. He sat up, raising the gun in my direction, but before he could pull the trigger, a shot rang out. It hit him in the back and knocked him to one side. He groaned, shuddered, and then lay still. Emma came running over, her gun still leveled at Luke the entire time. As soon as she reached him, she prodded him in the back with her foot. When he didn't move, she stepped on the wrist of his gun hand, pinning the weapon to the ground. He still didn't move, so she bent down, carefully pulled the gun out of his fingers, and then came over to me. Are you okay? She asked breathlessly. I think so, I said weakly, still in shock from everything that had just happened. Emma handed me Luke's gun. Keep an eye on him. I need to go help Jenkins. She disappeared into the shadows, leaving me with a strange mix of emotions. I sat there, watching Luke's still body, the weight of what had just happened crashing down on me. The sound of footsteps made me look up. It was Jenkins, helped by Emma, walking toward me. Damn, I feel like I've been kicked by a mule, Jenkins groaned, his grin more of relief than humor. Just think how you'd feel if you hadn't been wearing your vest, Emma joked, then started calling for support on her radio. Once they confirmed backup was on the way, she came over and started untying the straps that bound me to the tree. I really didn't think he'd resist, she said, her voice shaking slightly from the adrenaline. That was quick thinking, the way you kicked him. I just reacted. Didn't have time to think. Then it hit me. How did you know to find us here? Emma smiled. I've been keeping an eye on you ever since you got out on bail. Ah, so you really thought I would done it. The smile grew broader. No, I was pretty sure you weren't guilty. I've seen wife killers before, and you didn't act like one. Even when we got the DNA match, I still had doubts. I sighed, relieved, but also drained, my mind reeling from everything that had happened. Hey, I slapped my forehead. You need to talk to Max, my lawyer. He found out something was wrong with your DNA test. Emma shrugged apologetically. I'm sorry about that. When the match came back positive, we never thought about the possibility that your brother would have almost identical DNA. I looked back at Luke's body lying crumpled on the dirt. It seemed right. Even in the end, he was still an afterthought. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories.